This is long, and I'm long-winded. Sorry, X. 2.5 years ago, I moved to Bloomington, Indiana. I'd recently decided to start anew. My grandfather had died and left me $15,000, and the only friend I had outside of Texas lived there. I didn't want to live in that god-awful oven of a state anymore, so Indiana seemed as good of a place as any, really. When I first got here, I moved in with my friend, who I'd known since early childhood. We dated a while back, broken things off, and become friends again. I didn't want to stay in that cramped apartment forever with her and her two girly girl roommates, so I quickly began looking for a piece of property to call my own. See, I wanted to raise goats eventually. I looked everywhere, hoping to do a lease purchase. I eventually found an older, early 1900s, late 1800s house about 20 minutes from town that sat comfortably on 23 acres of land and had an owner very willing to do a deal. It needed work, but came with an older barn, and it was a steal at the price it was offered at. I gave the woman who owned it $10,000, signed a lease purchase, and moved in a few weeks later. A week after me, my friend moved in. It was cheaper living with me than in her apartment. This was about 2 years ago. Picture unrelated. Immediately, we noticed some odd things. The woman we bought it from, who lives about 3 miles from here and we're now sort of friends with, wouldn't tell us much about the history of the house. Only that it was old, had been vacant for 2 years, and that it was 100% as is. She also would not go in the house more than necessary, nor would she walk the back 15 acres with us, which is all woods, or go into the barn. The few neighbors who had been there for more than a few years were a bit surprised we bought the place, but weren't as freaked out about it as the prior owner. I assumed it was because of all the work the property needed. There were 2 broken windows, most of the doors jammed, it needed some new wiring, one step was broken in the stairs, etc. Within a month, the place looked brand new. We shined the hardwood floors, painted the walls, replaced broken windows, and fixed the doors. It looked like a historical home. There were some oddities though. Like I said, first I noted that the attic's walls were 100% unfinished, aside from a few barely hanging panels of drywall. Yet the steps in the floor were carpeted, and someone had wired the upstairs for cable and telephone. We don't get cable out here, so why someone would do that, I don't know. One of the drywall panels had a drawing from a children's book from the 1960s or so, I'd say, nailed to it, and it had been colored over. It wasn't anything creepy, and looked like it was from Alice in Wonderland, and the child had just filled in the lines. The original drawing was black and white. However, it was nailed to a much newer piece of drywall, 4 to 5 years old, and there had been no children in the house for much longer than that. The board also had ripped edges from other drawings on it and several children's handprints in blue and pink paint. I didn't think much of it at the time and still don't classify it as 100% paranormal. Strangely, the attic's lights, it had several, did not work. In the crawl space in it, there were 2 that I found immediately, did not have floors, just drywall covered in carpet, which I really found fucking bizarre. This also killed me because I crawled in one and almost fell through the ceiling. The attic soon became my project, especially as winter set in and the house became drafty. I was 100% convinced at the time it was the attic. I ripped up the carpet first. The carpet did not have padding under most of it, only about half the attic, and there were unfinished hardwood floors beneath it. Under the side that didn't have padding, there were what looked like chalk lines under the carpet on the wood, but they'd gotten smeared over the years, and I assumed the same children who left me the handprints and drawing had played with chalk one day. Now, I just find that sort of unnerving. I then went about finishing the floors in the crawl space and repairing the damage I did when I almost fell through and wiring the attic properly. I didn't know it didn't have lights until I tried working up there after dark one night and the lights wouldn't come on. To do that, I removed most of the drywall. as I wanted a few plugs up there. This didn't include the board with the handprints. Now, it's worth noting that I can't smell shit. I grew up on a farm, and I've smelled blood, rot, and feces regularly since I was born. Unless an odor's truly overpowering, it just doesn't really bother me. Until I was done with the wiring, my roommate hadn't ever been up in the attic. When she went up there once, she immediately told me something smelled and tracked the odor down to a piece of drywall with the handprints/drawing. I humored her, removed it, and was unpleasantly surprised by what I found. A dead, rotting cat. It hadn't been there more than a couple months, although the attic had been sealed. No openings large enough for a cat. The only door up to it had been closed. I didn't think much of it though, and threw the cat out. After scrubbing the space, I replaced the drywall, finished the walls, and considered it a day. My bedroom is unfortunately located when you go up the stairs. If you turn up left, you come to my door within a few feet. My room's the biggest, about 40% of the upstairs living area. Unfortunately, it also has the only door to the attic in it. If you go the entire length of my room, you come to a small hall at the end. And if you turn left again, you've got my attic. It's hard to describe, really. This unnerved me a little, especially after I began hearing thumping noises above me, usually at night. At first, I assumed it was a rat or something of the sort. Come in for the winter. I'd never heard the noise before then. After it got bad one night, it sounded like something was hopping around up there and getting into the things I'd stored there. I went up there to see if I could find the little bugger's nest. I knew it wasn't the walls, as I just recently put most of them in. I checked the floor, even ripping up one board, which looked damaged. Nothing but dust and a few marbles. I assumed the children who'd surely been up there lost them in the floor somehow. Eventually, I began checking the walls for any hollow spots after the noises got progressively louder. Eventually, I found one behind the only piece of drywall I hadn't replaced. Behind it was another crawl space. This one finished with a floor. I didn't find anything in it. Nowhere for the rat or whatever to hide. However, it was abnormally cold. Despite having only one external wall, we're talking a good 20 Fahrenheit lower than my mid-40s/50s attic. It was like I'd stepped outside. I added an access, put up rat traps, and forgot about it. I never caught a rat, nor did I ever find animal droppings. The noises continued, getting louder as winter went on, until it sounded like there was a party going on upstairs. When spring came, the noises got less intense, a thump or two every night, but that was it. I got used to it, and I never mentioned it to my roommate, who apparently didn't hear the noises. She never complained about it. The crawl space, however, remained cold and unnerving. Even in the summer, the crawl space was much cooler than my air-conditioned home. It was not the only cold spot, nor the only one I had direct contact with. The second cold spot was my closet. When we first moved in, I noticed how much colder it was than the rest of the house, a good 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and that it had a light, musty smell that even I could notice. I stored boxes and records in it, and nothing else. I decided to air it out and left it open one morning, only to find it closed when I got home. After repeating the cycle 2 or 3 more times, I asked my roommate to stop closing the door. She claimed she hadn't been in the room and didn't know what I was talking about. I found it creepy, but brushed it aside. I began leaving it open at night, but found it hard to sleep. When I did finally fall asleep, I'd awake to it being closed again. I stopped trying. The third cold spot was located in the empty third bedroom and was dead center in the middle of the room. It was the least intense but very noticeable, and you'd walk across the room and feel it. We have 4 dogs and 2 cats in the house, and all the animals refused to go in that room. Despite it being bigger than my roommate's room and having a much larger closet, she didn't pick it when we moved in, instead picking the smaller room that shared a wall with my snoring ass. I think we were all bothered by that room. In mid-spring, we got another roommate, a kid I'd met online who was getting kicked out and I felt bad for. He took up the empty third bedroom, under the crawl space. Not long after that, my first roommate, F for now on, to avoid confusion with the new guy, N, got a boyfriend, T, who began to stay over more. Immediately, N began to complain about the cold spot and how it was poor installation. He also complained how his dog didn't like to be in his room and blamed that on the cold. He went out of his way, even in the summer, to make it warmer in his room. While it'd be hotter than hell in 90% of his room, if you stood in the cold spot, you'd still feel it. He also began complaining of a tapping noise in the ceiling, which he said sounded like fingers rapping on a desk, and blamed on a rat. I was glad someone else heard the invisible rat and tried in earnest to find the fucker again. We still never found it. Meanwhile, I bought 11 more acres from a neighbor, directly behind my property. This was largely woods, with a small stream running through it. By now, I was trying to fence in my property so I could bring my horses. I'd bought a few over the spring, home, and let my 2 pet goats out of their stall in the barn. Our first summer in the house was in full swing. The barn was another thing of interest. When we moved in, the barn was filthy. The stalls, 5 of them, and built-in run in were filled with feces, horse, cow, muck, and trash. 2 stalls were full of horse tack, buckets, bags of trash, etc. Apparently, about a year before we moved in, the barn had been rented out to someone with 5 horses. They'd left in a hurry. We assumed back rent, and hadn't cleaned anything before they left, and had left all their tack. What we first assumed was a treasure trove of unclaimed belongings. Soon just became a hassle, and abnormally thick, literally an inch in some places. Layer of dust was over everything, making it so we couldn't even tell what most of it was before we cleaned it. It took so long to clean things, and so much of it was trash, that a lot of things just went into the trash. We did get some very nice bridles and a saddle out of the mess, which we thought was odd. The stalls were cleaned, and the main room was also cleaned. The main room also had the thick dust, which was actually worse. We first thought it had a dirt floor, until we discovered it was stone underneath. The stones/bricks were very old and very dirty. Some had numbers and letters carved into them. Eventually, we got 2 goats, which we kept in one of the stalls. The rest of the barn remained empty, and as I said before, there was no fencing. While working on the fencing, we began to notice our progress was being hindered. We'd put in 24 poles a day, woke up the next morning, and a quarter of them would be knocked over, laying sometimes feet away from the holes. We assumed it was just pranksters and went on regardless. Soon, we had the actual wire up. It was then that we realized whatever was destroying the fence was a determined motherfucker. We'd come out one morning and entire sections of wire would be broken, meaning we'd have to redo hours of work. It was then that T, my main helper for the fence, said roughly the following. Probably not an exact quote, but it goes as follows. "It's gotta be kids. It's not like deer are doing this. I've never even seen a fucking deer out here." I realized then that I'd never seen any wildlife out there either. Nothing big anyway. Our neighbors' lawns were full of deer, and we'd occasionally see one in the back acres, especially around the stream, but never anything around the barn, house, or in the fields. Not just deer either. Birds, raccoons, even dogs. Nothing ever came around. Eventually, we got the fencing up, bought the horses home, and life was normal for a while. N began acting oddly. Although he'd always been the lonely neckbeard type, this coming from a man who actually sports a neckbeard. He stopped coming out of his room, aside from using the bathroom and occasionally eating, and refused to go outside. Because of this, he stopped paying his share of the bills and his rent as he quickly ran out of money. It soon became so bad that he didn't even leave his room to walk his dog or even let it outside. We didn't realize this until it began peeing everywhere, and he began blaming us, mostly our dogs, but he once accused T of urinating in the hall. And after a while, he was no longer talking to us. By then, F and I were both planning on kicking him out, but didn't exactly know how to word it to him, and I felt bad, as I knew he had nowhere to go. I was at work one day when I got a call from a very upset F. Apparently, she'd been showering, and upon leaving the bathroom with just a towel on, we all got used to N basically not being there and acted like he wasn't most of the time, found N right outside of the bathroom door, just staring at it. He wouldn't move to let her by, and she actually had to push him out of the way. She figured he was just being an ass, went to her room, got dressed, and went to tell him off, only to find him standing outside her bedroom door that time. He wouldn't speak to her or move again, and she was a bit worried he was up to something. She wanted me to come home. I did and asked him why he'd done that. He refused to speak, but did message me over MSN and basically told me he hadn't done it. I believe F, as she's never lied about shit like that before, and that I was an awful person because I lived in the country and had bad internet and didn't walk his dog for him. I gave him a week's notice to get out then and there. He left exactly a week later without saying anything and took all our pillowcases when he left. That really fucking ruffled my jimmies, but not as much as his room did. Oh, when I saw his room, my jimmies were as ruffled as they could get. His room was full of trash, literally piles of it. He'd also began to urinate in bottles and had snooked off onto the walls. No, I'm not kidding. We were in the process of cleaning it when we were actually attacked by an iguana that he'd brought into the house at some point and never told us about, which had been hiding under his bed. None of us ever heard from N after that, so I don't know what came of him. His room remained empty for over a year. It was about then that the actual weird shit began happening. I'd come home to find things in my room rearranged. Pencils would be taken out of my desk drawers and arranged in neat little squares. My keyboard would be stacked on top of my hard drive, with my speakers on top of it. My books would be taken out of my shelves and stacked into pyramids. This would happen if I'd left and no one else had come home while I was gone. Sometimes it'd happen when I left to go to the bathroom and came right back to my room. It began happening to F and T, who soon moved in completely, as well, although to a lesser extent. Dust began returning in the barn, without any real source. We'd clean things one night, come back in the morning, only to find a thick layer of dust on everything, more than one could explain away from bedding or dirt. We don't live in a dry area, by the way. The creepiest thing to happen to me thus far came in the early fall. I built a small shed to store my tools in by the house and went out one morning, well, about 11 p.m., to find T digging through the shed. T and F both go to college, and he shouldn't have been home at the time. I asked him what he was doing, and he replied that he needed something and kept going through the things. I noticed him leave with a pair of garden shears and a pickaxe a few minutes later and thought nothing of it, other than he was probably high. I didn't see him for the rest of the day until he came back from class with F. He told me he'd been at class all day long, and the reason his car hadn't moved was thanks to carpooling. One could argue he'd lied and snuck off at some point, but it really freaked me out. There's no chance in hell the guy I saw run off with my shears and pickaxe was not him. And if it wasn't, he's got an identical twin out there somewhere. I didn't see either tool again for months. Midwinter, I went out to find my shears wedged between two of the front porch boards, just hanging out. The pickaxe has yet to be found. No, I don't know what they were used for. My shears were in clean, oiled condition when they reappeared, and didn't look any different than when I'd first seen them. I never noticed any holes or trimmed bushes on my property. Not long after, we began stocking up on hay for our horses over the winter. This was before the shears reappeared. We never used our hayloft before, as we'd only had about 20 bales of hay at the time, which we stacked downstairs. We were busily putting hay up there with the help of some redneck friends, when F, who'd been up in the loft stacking hay, fell out one of the portholes on the side of the barn. She ended up with a badly sprung wrist, and is probably lucky that's all that happened. We assumed she tripped or slid, but she was horribly angry when she got down there, because she thought one of us had pushed her. Only one of my friends had been up there, and we, myself and my other friend, could both see him at the time she fell, and he was nowhere near her. To this day, she insists someone pushed her. It's worth noting that the stacking / rearranging of items was still going on at this time, and had moved on to fruit and other small items downstairs in the dining room and kitchen. We'd also begun finding stray marbles around the house. Winter hit, and it hit hard. When we got the first snow, we got a few inches of it, and caring for the horses became more of a hassle, with blanketing and such. I kept 2 chickens at the time, who had free range of my barn during the day. One evening, I went to put everyone up, and the chickens were both gone. I searched everywhere for them, and never found their bodies, blood, footprints of them, or any other animal, or even a feather. I still have not found them. By the time I got back from searching the nearby area, it was already dark out. It hadn't been when I left, so the lights in the barn had been off when I left. Now, however, they were on. I first thought that F or T had come out and turned them all on, but there was no footprints other than mine and my dog's, and I didn't see their cars in the driveway. I figured I'd done goofed, and went about my routine of putting food in stalls, cleaning up last night's shit, and filling water buckets. Now I've got a draft horse. He's big, he's fat, and you don't fuck with his feeding routine. He'll literally tear apart a barn if he doesn't get his food, and he's never late for a meal. Hell, most of my horses aren't. Not one horse was at the run-in, waiting to be led into their stalls. The goats who'd been given their food were nervous and not eating. I was worried at that point that someone had been messing around the barn, and possibly stolen the chickens, and maybe done something with the horses. I grabbed a ledge rope, went out into the dark and snow-covered pasture, and began calling for horses. Still, no one came. Hell, my dog hadn't even followed me out into the pasture, and was staying in the barn this time. I felt very alone all of a sudden, but as if someone or something were watching me. I trudged on, jumpy but determined, and eventually found 5 very jumpy and upset horses in the back corner of the pasture. None of them wanted to come to the barn, and I literally had to drag one back. The draft horse went into his stall, only to practically run me over trying to get out a second later, and had to be pushed and prodded back into his stall. By the time everyone was up, 2 hours had gone by, and I was pretty jumpy myself. I remember seeing shapes at the edge of my limited vision. Shit gets dark in the country, and at some point, you just see shapes in the distance. But these could have been my imagination or deer. I was happy to get inside anyway. The next night, F went out with me to feed the horses. They were jumpy, but less so than the night before, although I felt like I was being watched and couldn't wait to go back to the house. F later told me that it felt thin out there that night. When she explained further, she said she thought the lines between realms were thin. She's a bit of a paranormal freak, but I can't say I didn't feel it too. Not long after, my pet goat Wally began to choke on his food. He stopped being able to eat properly, and we called a vet. The vet told us he was healthy from what we could tell, and everything checked out. I tried lots of things, from massaging his neck to patting his back while he ate, but he got no better and began to get thin. Eventually, he died. I don't know if it's related or not, but his rather sudden, it all happened in about 2 weeks, death, and how the vet couldn't explain it, bothered me. I bought a few more goats to keep my other fellow company, and forgot about it, until one of my other goats died from strangely similar symptoms a month later. I became incredibly paranoid, fearing they'd all caught some sort of horrible goat disease. Fortunately, no one else died, and the best I can explain was the dust got to them. We built a new barn in the spring. This is the third winter here, so I was probably wrong about my earlier estimate of 2 years. It's been a long day. 3 makes more sense when I honestly think about it, and suffered no more deaths, as said before. The horses also began to perk up, acting less skittish in general. We no longer used the other barn. When I last went in there, the dust was back to an inch thick. We don't even store things in there, and our new barn does not have these problems. Unlike the winter before, things didn't get better with spring. New noises began popping up, including a loud hum from the pipes. A toy plane positioned atop some shelves flew off the shelves and hit me in the face when I was on the computer. The stacking intensified until it was no longer 1 to 2 stacks a day, but 3 to 4 a day. We began to admit we had a problem. By the end of spring, F and T were fighting like cats and dogs, and T eventually left. I came home one evening to find all the upstairs windows open. I was the first to come home, and nothing had been stolen. We found a marble in the garbage disposal, but not until I've been running it. We had to buy a new one. F is Jewish. I'm not religious. She suggested we get someone to bless the house, and eventually convinced her rabbi to do it. He did it, and things got better for a while. He did an entire ceremony, and the house stopped being stuffy and intimidating, like it had grown to be. The noises stopped for the most part, marble stopped popping up, and we got only a few stacks a week. The old barn remained odd, especially at night, and occasionally we'd have to go in there to turn off the lights or close doors that had turned on themselves. We went trail riding that summer on the property, only for both our horses to spook at nothing by the stream, dump us, and run off to hide in the barn. We seriously don't know what they spooked at, and we still can't get them to go near that stream. No, it isn't water. They're fine with water, if it isn't that stream. Sorry for being slow. I didn't expect anyone to read this far down. Other than a few oddities, things were better. My sister visited me for the first time at my house. We met in town once when she drove up there, but I didn't really want her knowing where my house was, and remarked that the house, quote, creeped her out. My girlfriend at the time said the same thing when she first saw the house. But like I said, things were a lot better. This winter, things have gotten bad again. It started in late November and just got worse. The noises returned in the attic, accompanied by new ones. I went to bed one night and began hearing classical music. I asked F to turn it off, and she said it wasn't her music. It stopped a few minutes later. We sometimes hear a click in the basement. F got a new boyfriend a few months back, who we'll call L. He claims something watches him from the attic, although he only first claimed this a week or 2 ago. F's reluctant to go upstairs, and I come home to find her sleeping on the couch sometimes. Money's tight, so we got another roommate, the first one we've had since N. They took the spare bedroom, which we kept empty, aside from furniture, and left, and told me yesterday, after only a month here, that they couldn't stay anymore and had to go. They just didn't feel comfortable here. The stacks are worse again too. I woke up this morning with the attic key in the door and the door unlocked. I always lock it when I'm done going up there, so it doesn't pop open and a dog doesn't go up there. I never leave the key in the door. I decided to try and figure out what happened and called the woman I bought the house from to talk to her. I didn't tell her we had been having any problems and she hasn't been to the house in over a year, so she doesn't really know what's been happening. I just told her I wanted to know the history. She told me she was glad I liked the house so much because she hadn't wanted to tell me quite everything when I bought the place. Apparently, she rented it out in the 80s. She's owned it since the mid-70s and only lived in it for a few years then. She lived in it again in the 90s and rented it out in the 2000s. And her tenant ended up committing S-word by hanging in the house. In my fucking closet. There's an exposed beam in the ceiling, so I guess that's as good of a place as any. She said it like it was a joke. I don't think that's the only thing that has happened here. I don't think that explains why the barn's got so many problems or why the attic does. F's leaving, moving in with L. Says that she can't handle living here. I'm tempted to agree with her and have begun looking for a new place. It's just too stressful living here. No, we didn't have some big event happen. No, we didn't have skeletons or ghosts pop out and R-word us. And Slenderman isn't haunting us. We're just tired of it. My TV randomly turns itself off at night, only to turn back on and wake me up on different channels. My window's open. It's always drafty and cold. It's 1,000 little things. No rattling chains or screaming banshees. It's just uncomfortable here. F's packing up, but says she won't leave until I've got a place to go. The new roommate, we'll call him A, plans on leaving Tuesday. I'm considering taking a job down in Kentucky, and I'm driving down there to look at a house Monday. It's new construction, and I think all my houses from now on will be. Congrats to those who finished it. Yeah, I know, it's long and boring and lacks a good end. I just thought you guys may like to read it. If you have any questions, I'll stay up and answer them. I'm not sleeping tonight anyway. Thumping's too loud. Oh, and did I mention the attic lights went out over the fall? I've tried fixing them 3 times, but they won't work anymore. And nothing I do, or the professional electrician we hired did, fixes them. And then some people start asking some questions. Someone says, have you tried leaving a sound recorder on in the paranormal hotspots overnight? I mean, if you really do have all these problems, why not just rent out another place and open this one up as like a haunted hotel tourist trap kind of thing? Just an idea. And then the OP says, oh, and to clarify one more thing, I'm in the process of selling the place. I got a real loan back in '09, and I've got about $40K paid off on the place, $10K down payment plus about $20K in payments, plus a $10K present F's rich Jewish dad gave me. I've got 2 interested parties who like it for the 33 acres, 2 barns and historical house. If they don't go through, I'll kind of give myself out to my parents to get the other house and try and lease this until I can sell it. And then someone else says, OP, I'd suggest fucking with the ghost. Show the bitch you mean business. Burn down the old barn, like straight up torch it. Don't call for insurance or anything. Just be like, hey, motherfucker, I bought this house and I plan on staying here. If you keep effing with me though, I'll burn down your favorite places. Also, the next few nights after that, sleep in a motel. The ghost will probably be pissed. I checked local historical register for something happening in that house in 1933. It is long known that CAPTCHA is prophetic. Someone else says, great. This makes me kind of nervous to move into my new home. My fiance and I just bought a home a few states away. It's an old Victorian and a fixer-upper. I mean, a real fixer-upper. It was a good story, had me intrigued. Also, despite there not being any real big ending, it was good. Thanks for keeping me entertained while I wait to go to bed. And then the OP starts to answer some of these questions, saying, hopefully there won't be a next time. This isn't fake, although I understand if you think it is. He also replies to another comment saying, I really want to cut ties with it and get the fuck out of here. If I'm stuck with it, I might try that, just so it doesn't get taken back. I don't want to fuck up my credit because of fucking ghosts. I'm honestly afraid to leave a tape recorder out. Although L suggested it before, I'm afraid something will be telling us to go die in a fire on it. He also says, I don't plan on putting any more money in this house, and I'm saving up right now to get into the next place. The best I could do is leave my webcam on during the day while I'm gone, and it's so grainy, you'd probably never see anything in it. He also says, I might try it in the morning, but I don't want to listen to it. F and L can if they want, but I don't want to. I'm too much of a chicken shit. I'd do it right this minute, but if I have a tape recorder, it's in the attic. And then the OP finally says, good night and good luck, and finally comments, if I can't sell the place and have to stay here, I might try that. I don't honestly know where one finds a Catholic priest or how F got the rabbi here. Do I just go into a church and ask for ghost help? And that's the last we have ever heard from the OP on this story, but you guys might be going, oh, well, that was a boring story. And I kind of understand that, but once again, this is true 4chan's threads, and I tried to pick some true stories, and to me, this seemed true, because a lot of true stories are often not that climatic. They don't have a crazy ending. But I think the ending there was disturbing. I mean, he called the old homeowner, and she's like, someone committed S-word in here, and it's in your closet. I mean, just think about that for a second. Imagine you lived in a house, all this crazy shit's happening, and there's cold spots in your house, and you can't explain it, and there's knocking, and there's tapping, and all this stuff, and you call the old homeowner, and she says someone committed S-word in your closet, and you never knew. And there's always weird shit happening with the closet. I mean, that is just so scary to me, and this just feels like a true story, because a lot of the fake stories, they just go for it, and they go on a crazy ramble, giving all these crazy details that just don't seem realistic. But this one just seems eerie, and like the OP said, unnerving. And I mean, it was unexplainable. Who knows what it was? And so that's the title of this video. But I hope you enjoyed that one. I really enjoyed this one. And yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. And just a quick preface before we get into this next story. This story is a lot different than usual. It is not your average scary story I read, and it's a slow burner, but it is so worth the listen. At first, you'll be caught off guard. I do agree the details and the descriptions of some things are a little bit odd, but the story just blew my mind. It is often labeled as one of the greatest green texts of all time, so you'll want to stick around. And without further ado, let's get into The Ballad of Ella. This is my story, B. Be me, 19-year-old college freshman. This was 10 years ago. I had this bro from high school, Pete. We were friends, but not exactly bros. He was a cool guy, and I think I was cool to him. Turns out we applied to the same college and enrolled, going to the same classes, practically spending all of our time together. Away from you, family, with your high school life behind you, things can get hectic. Yeah, you are teenagers with no real problems to deal with, but you still need a friend you can depend on. And we were that friends to each other. Fast forward a couple of months. Second semester. We start taking this new class, and there is this girl in the class. Not just us, but every human being with a working PP in the entire campus is losing their shit over her. Ordinary straight girls are ready to become lesbians just for her. I mean, man, wow, what an angel, a beam of light? Do a machina descending from heaven? I have no fucking idea. A value over 10 is a measurement that applies to us, mere mortals. Her beauty cannot be calculated or properly abstracted with numbers. And looking at her is like something you know you shouldn't do. Not because it's creepy or socially awkward or some other shit. It's because you feel like you're not worthy. Not for her, you're not. No, not her. But we were looking. Turns out we first saw her practically at the same time. And we wanted to point her to one another. But we couldn't take our eyes off of her. So we sat in some lousy economy class or whatever and drooled over her for half an hour. Before I whispered, dude, fuck me. And it took Pete a solid 5 minutes before he could simply say, yeah. There she was, this 5'9" lady with long, wavy auburn hair and emerald green eyes to die for, and pretty sure to kill for, sitting just a couple feet away from us. Yeah, so, fuck me, was the correct response in that situation. Pick is unrelated random chick. After the class, to this day, I can't remember for the life of me what the fuck it was about. We were already orbiting her like some lousy asteroids stuck to a massive black hole, creepily getting closer and closer to her as she sucked us in. bumping to each other and walking like we were drunk and out of our minds. I don't know what it was. Maybe she realized that we were following her like pervs. Or maybe it was something else. Halfway to the cafeteria, she just stopped and turned towards us. We immediately bumped into each other and stopped as well. But her beauty was so miraculous, we forgot to look somewhere else. I remember her gaze. It was like the back of our heads blew open and brains splattered all over the hallway. Those green eyes, man. And she smiled. She fucking smiled. If we weren't healthy, fit males in their prime, we would have died of a heart attack at that moment. We couldn't breathe. She was so beautiful. So there we were, still staring at her, our eyes and mouths wide open. We were in our low, way low 2-digit IQs at that moment. And there she was, in all of her glory. Like I said, 5'9", long wavy auburn hair, emerald green eyes. Long, curvy, and athletic legs, slimmer at the knees. Well-defined muscles on her calves and soft but rigid thighs. Her ankles were so elegant, but her tendons were sprained, as if she were a wild gazelle ready to bolt out at a moment's notice. Her butt, I can't call it an ass, not hers. Ass is what girls have. This lady had something else. She had buttocks that required a new definition of the word. They were so firm and so well shaped, you could perfectly calculate for pi if you took the measurement. Her breasts, I don't even have the words. To this day, I'm still searching for the right words, and I will try and describe them later in the story, but I will fail terribly. I can still remember what she was wearing that day. I know what she was wearing probably better than her on the day she wore them. And I know this because Pete knew this. After she looked at us and smiled, just for a few seconds, which felt like an eternity, she turned around again and kept on walking. We just stayed put. We couldn't follow her. Our black hole left us lonely asteroids to the pitch black emptiness of cold space. So after the school, we went to our dorm room with no information about her whatsoever. No name, no nothing. Just a mental image of her elegant stance etched deep into our minds. I was looking at the picture of random women with green eyes and auburn hair on Yahoo. That was the only thing I could do. But none of the images even came close to matching her beauty. Well, Pete felt like he had to do something. And he fucking started searching for her clothes. I shit you not. He was searching for her clothes on Amazon and eBay and all these fashion and shopping sites neither of us knew nothing about. He started with searching for her skirt, which was this black wool cashmere circle skirt with a playful flare at the bottom, couple inches above her knee, revealing her thighs just a little bit. When he found it, he shouted, "I found it, fuck yeah." And I thought he had found her. But when I saw what he found, which was this, I don't know what brand skirt on Amazon, I was far from being disappointed. I was feeling the same way. We didn't know her name, but fuck if we didn't know what skirt she was wearing. Pete kept going with the search and I helped him. At the end of the night, we knew what flat she was wearing, what shirt. We even knew what brand her red bow-shaped hair clip was. I mean, look, we are straight guys. I figure I'm a 7 out of 10, maybe an 8. Pete is an easy 8 out of 10, pushing 9. We were both fit. We don't have ugly pimples on our faces or anything. We were both very decent. We were not short, chubby. And also, we were not the most popular kids in high school. We were definitely not social castouts either. But that night, we were more gay than a male fashion design student wearing pink Donna Grays and coming out of the closet singing YMCA. And we knew what skirt she was wearing, so yeah. And before we went to sleep, Pete had an idea. That motherfucker had the most excellent idea. He knew he needed an extra something if he was ever going to talk to her, let alone date her. So he decided he should start learning about fashion and use his knowledge as a conversation starter. Meanwhile, I was feeling like I could go to Mars with a new Apollo mission or save the world from a new regime all by myself and still wouldn't be able to impress her. I was a hopeless F-slur. Next morning, the first thing Pete did was to enroll in a class on fashion design. Pete didn't know if this tactic was even going to work. Pete didn't know if this magnificent creature would speak fashion with him. But he had hopes. Meanwhile, we were both unable to speak to her. We were a bunch of beta F-slurs, scared out of our minds. But we learned her name from a friend. Ella. Ella was her name. Pete didn't want to waste his chances in leaving a perfect first impression with Ella. Well, the first impression both of us have left with us standing in the middle of the hallway, staring at her like we were a bunch of R-worded perverts. But speaking to her was a different matter altogether. I figured if Pete had no chance of talking to her now, how could I? Besides, Pete was so into zone. I didn't want to compete. Not that I could, or so I believed. Fast forward a couple of weeks. Pete, as a freshman, knew more about fashion than seniors knew about economy in our department. He was spending his nights browsing fashion blogs. Every night, he would come to our room with a list of items she was wearing that day, studying her taste in fashion. Pete told me that this could actually work, since while a lot of the girls on campus dressed like trailer trashes, Ella was always amazing in her choice of clothes. Our room was filled with editions of Vogue and GQ and shit. A couple of friends have seen our stash of fashion magazines and joked about it, so we made a lousy explanation of how they were quality snooking it material and got away with it. One day, Pete woke up and turned to me. "I'm ready," he said, like Neo saying, "I know Kung Fu." I said, "Show her." Anyways, Pete decided that whatever she's wearing that day, he felt like he could intelligently talk to her about her clothes. After the economy class, I wished him luck, and we parted ways. An hour later, he found me. I asked him, "How did it go?" I don't know, man. I really don't know. I mean, I might as well have done great or fucked it up completely." "Why?" "Look, we talked about fashion for an hour." "So you talked for an hour? That's great, man." Damn, we were beta F slurs. "Yeah, but what if she thinks I'm gay?" I started laughing. Pete had a point. Straight guys don't usually talk about fashion. Certainly not about women's fashion. Suddenly, Ella comes out of nowhere. I froze. Pete looked at me and understood that Ella was coming our way. "Hey, Pete." And I heard Ella's voice for the first time. She had a crackly, deep voice. Kind of reminds me of Scarlett Johansson now. A lot of people don't think that kind of voice is flattering, but if you found me a soprano that sings Agnus Dei, I would have told you, shut that woman up and let Ella sing. "Hey, Ella," said Pete, his heart probably skipping a couple of beats. I remembered now. I got it from Anthropology. I have absolutely no idea what she's talking about. "Oh, thanks." "Don't mention it. It's from last season, though. I don't think you could buy it for your sister, but they might have something similar." "Oh, well, thank you for telling me, Ella." "You're welcome. See you around, Pete." "See you, Ella." And we watched Ella walking away from us gracefully until she disappeared in the distance, still looking at her general direction as if we could still see her. "Dude, your sister is 7. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know she is." "Yeah, I know. Magnificent." A week later, Pete had another idea. In order to not look like a gay couple, he suggested that we develop this manly handshake and establish that we are in fact bros. Like a bunch of idiots, we stayed up all night, working out this complex yet subtle, or so we thought, secret handshake. Our stupidity was at an immeasurable new height. Pete was chatting up Ella little by little every day, but he was afraid of becoming a gay BFF and lose all chance of dating her. So he requested me to approach them tomorrow at some point mid-conversation and apply the handshake. Okay then. After our economy class, I gave Pete some time, then joined them in the cafeteria. As I approached them, Pete saw me coming, excused himself like a true boss gentleman, and we started acting out this ridiculous handshake in unison. I mean, it was absolute bullshit. Hands and fingers everywhere, clicking and fist bumping and doing other various stuff. It was like the douchebag version of Cirque du Soleil. Halfway through, yeah, it was that long it almost needed an interlude, Ella starts laughing her ass off. She was laughing like a crazy person. We freeze. The blood drains away from Pete's face, pale as fuck. We realize that we just fucked up. We fucked up immensely, and we force ourselves to turn and face Ella. She's trying to silence herself, still laughing. Pete and I still holding hands like idiots. She tries to apologize for laughing, but then she starts laughing even louder. We look around and hope that no one other person has acknowledged how dumb we look. Fortunately, no one other than Ella is laughing, but Ella is still laughing. Pete has this is how we die face. I'm all good. Ella's laughter finally dies down, and we're looking at her like rabbits caught in headlights. Guys, I know you're not gay. And she starts laughing again. Pete looks like he's about to shit his pants. And I don't know what it was. Maybe I started losing my nerve. Or maybe it was like a chain reaction to Ella's laughter. I start laughing my ass off as well. That manly handshake started playing out in my head over and over again. And I began to imagine myself doing the handshake, and I realized how absolutely idiotic it must have looked like. Pete starts laughing as well. All three of us are crying at this point. Now people are looking at us like, what the fuck? And that's how I met Ella. We finally sit down. I'm still chuckling like an ape. I extend my hand towards Ella. Hi, I'm Anon. She firmly grabs my hand. My God, her hands are beautiful. Long, slender fingers embrace my hairy man paws like the branches of a delicate flower. She has a very cold touch. Almost freezing, but at the same time, it's such an awakening feeling. I can feel the hairs on my forearm rising. Hi, Anon. I'm Ella. She responds with a warm smile and an incredibly sharp, piercing gaze. Her spellbinding eyes are filled with both an I got you now attitude and an older sister's love I melt. For how long have you guys practiced that stupid handshake, she asks. We start blushing like 5-year-old kids. All night, Pete answers as silently as possible. Ella claps her hands and pops a loud chuckle. I knew it, waving her fingers towards us. You guys are insecure. Pete grumbles. Oh, it's so cute. She puts on a funny face, pouting her spectacular pink lips. I'm losing my grasp on English language right now. Well, guys, I know you're not gay, but you're definitely homophobic. Well, we're not. I try to defend myself futilely. Oh, it's okay, Anon, she smiles. I can understand that feeling. Pete must be losing his mind. He just sits there, trying to find a way to regain his composure. Oh, come on, Pete. I know you feel uneasy talking to me about fashion. Pete looks shocked. He doesn't understand how he could be sidelined so bad. But he tries to make a case, which I assume he has none. It's really okay, Pete. I can sense that you have been working on fashion, makes a finger quote, for some time. Oh, fuck. Our jaws are sweeping the floor. How? Pete mumbles. Seriously, I know about your fashion class in your room full of fashion magazines. Ella winks at Pete. I'm about to lose my shit. Pete looks like he's been shot by Cupid's 50 cal machine gun. He's crushing hard, madly in love. How did you know? I ask, since Pete cannot come to the phone right now. Well, first of all, I have a friend in Pete's fashion class, and also some of your chums were talking about your stash and I overheard them. Pete silently mouths, fuck me. But most of all, Pete, I can see that you are new to the fashion world. Where did I go wrong? Pete must have been losing his hope at this point. Well, a fashionista, how can I put it, must look more fashionable, don't you think? Ella was right. Granted, Pete didn't walk around wearing shitty flip-flops and baggy sweatpants, but he wasn't actually a fashion icon either. Pete looks like he's about to burst into tears. Besides, your fashion sense has no context. A person who is deeply involved in any subject always speaks in some form of context. As Ella talks about Pete's failure, I feel both incredibly sad and incredibly turned on. Maybe I'm not from a family or a place where there were a lot of smart women around, and maybe I was just a dumb homophobic or maybe even sexist fuck. Who thinks all women learn about everything in life by furiously banging Ken and Barbie dolls into each other in their childhood? But I'll be damned if this magnificent woman isn't smart. Hey, it's okay, Pete. Ella sees Pete cringing like a puckered behind. I know why you did it. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Pete lines up like someone stuck a needle full of adrenaline into his chest. Meanwhile, I'm lost in Ella's eyes, studying her beautiful face as she talks. So I'm gonna give you a chance. Go ahead. Ask. Ask what? Pete shits the bed. Ella tilts her head and gives him a really face. Pete comes around again, gains his composure like a champ for the first time during the conversation. Well, do you want to grab a cup of coffee with me after school? Ella smiles at him and playfully nods with her eyes closed. I would love that, Pete. and she chuckles. And I sit there like a F-slur thinking of asking, "Can I come too?" Ella is beyond words to me. I feel stupid and powerless near her. "Thank you." Pete barely makes any sense. I can't imagine being in his place right now. Getting the green light from Ella after believing that he fucked up so badly. Ella laughs playfully and changes the subject. So we sat there and talked about our lives and how we knew each other for an hour. And I was able to get to know Ella, even if it was just for a little bit. But it was an amazing experience. A couple of weeks later, Pete and Ella were a couple. I've never seen Pete so happy. He was over the clouds all the time. The guy was out of his mind, counting seconds for their next date every time he kissed Ella goodbye. And I was happy for my bro. But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel uneasy every time I saw Ella. Ella was still the most amazing woman I've ever seen in my life. Nothing came remotely close to matching her beauty, not to mention her wits. And speaking to her was more fun than I could have ever had, doing anything. And I was trying extremely hard not to fall for her. I owed it to my bro and to myself. Fortunately, Ella came to my help. She introduced her friend Nicole to me. Nicole was the girl in Pete's fashion class, the girl Ella was talking about. Nicole was an incredibly beautiful girl. She was this amazing redhead, 5'6", big soft breasts, nice curvy body, pale blue eyes, cute little freckles on her face. You would think that a beautiful girl like Ella wouldn't be BFFs with another beauty like Nicole. 9 out of 10 times, you'd be right, but Ella had no competition. She was beyond competition. Ella could have been friends with the biggest bimbo there ever was, or she could have been hanging around with a fucking Swedish bikini team. She could have been sleepwalking in her PJs on a Victoria's Secret catwalk at a New Year's show for all I care. No matter the situation, Ella was always the one you looked at first. But yeah, Nicola was a bombshell too, and she was something else entirely. The four of us started hanging out together, started going to parties, hanging out after school, going to the movies, and slowly Nicole and I got very close. She had an amazing sense of humor, knew a lot about subcultures and shit. Finally, after a night out together, Pete and Ella decided to go to Ella's room by themselves. Turns out Ella's roommate was back at home for a family emergency or something like that, and Nicole and I kissed. Soon after, we officially became a couple. After what felt like an eternity, I wasn't interested in Ella that much. It felt good, not feeling like cheating on my bro. And Nicole was amazing in bed. In all things related to intimacy, she was a dream come true. The fantasies she was into were mind-boggling. The things she wore, stockings, blah, 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 surprised me with wake up, blah, blah, blah. I'm just not going to get into that. Some nights I would think, how the fuck am I supposed to regain my appetite after this? A couple hours later, there she was again, wearing something really good looking, doing things you would lose your mind for. The places we had intimacy and the positions we tried were pure. Yeah, this gets pretty graphic. I'm going to skip a lot of this. It felt like half of my daily diet was being used for snooking at juice. I'm going to regret saying that. She wouldn't use protection. No, sir. Where's the fun in that, she says. And she would always want more and more. Good thing I was fit and young. You can't do some of the things she asked for when you're 29. I would do things, and I couldn't feel my tongue. The girl was a queen. There was no stopping until she said enough. Wow, this goes on and on. I was scared shitless if there would come a time when I'm simply not enough, but she was loyal and honest as fuck. Never even flirted with the other guys, let alone cheat on me. I was really skeptical at first. It's a complete opposite of what you would expect. I somehow raised the issue with a delicate, yes, curious manner. I was treading lightly. Didn't want to offend her. You're mine, Anon, and I'm yours, she told me. Nothing will change that until such a time comes that we both decide otherwise, she would furiously declare. If there ever was a woman made out of a wife material, Nicole was the ultimate prototype. Her understanding of a relationship was beyond belief, and her connection to me was unbreakable. She was so incorruptible. She would straight up hit the guys trying to chat her up in their faces. You come near me again and I swear to God, I will use my entire boyfriend like a retractable baton and fuck you in the ass with him. That's an actual fucking quote I heard her shout at some poor kid. Holy shit. And there I was, standing like a beta F-slur who just won the lottery. My diamond, hard, so whatever, pulsating to her commanding voice. Jesus. Then she kisses me like there's no tomorrow, finds an empty room in a house full of partying people, hangs my sock on the doorknob, and does her thing. Yeah, that was Nicole in a nutshell. So I've never imagined there would be trouble at the Paradise, but come summertime, something else happened. My dad asked one of his old friends in LA for an internship position on my behalf. His friend accepted me to his firm, and while everyone was having a great time, I was supposed to work at the accounting department of this design office in LA. This meant that I wasn't going to spend my summer satisfying Nicole, or doing anything fun for that matter. Before she went to the airport, Nicole kissed me as if we weren't going to see each other again, like ever. You don't forget who you belong to, mister, she told me with tearful eyes. I won't, Nicole. I promise. Man, the love and care this girl had shown me was something else. Even though I told her numerous times that I loved her, and I meant it, I had this feeling that my love for her didn't even come close to what she felt towards me. You take care of yourself, you hear? And she left, hesitantly walking backwards to her bus to the airport. Pete had already gone home previous weekend, so I was all by myself, walking around in this college ghost town, on my way back to the dorm, wanting to pack my stuff ASAP and get ready to my flight to LA. And there she was, walking towards me. Ella. Hey, sup, Anon? She greeted me with a warm smile. Hey, Ella, I just sent off Nicole. Ah, you guys, she cried, right? With a snappy laugh. I know she cried. Ha, well, you know her, right? She loves you, Anon, that's why. Ella reached out and stroked my arm, showing that she cared. For the first time in quite a while, I suddenly felt a jolt, a rush. It was like the time when I first saw her up close. As her cold hands brushed my skin, my pupils dilated, like the first sip of a morning coffee. A surge of a small dose of adrenaline hit my body. I quickly broke out of her spell. I had to. So, where are you off to, Ella? Oh, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Off to see my parents in LA. What? We might be on the same flight. That was the most S-word neutral thing I could think of at that time. You serious? What are you doing in LA? Ella asked with a delighted curiosity, her big green eyes glimmering with excitement. I have this job my dad arranged for me. I'm not exactly going there for a vacation, I pout. Ah, don't worry, Anon. I'll keep you company. It will be fine, I promise. Cheerfully reassuring me. My heart skipped a beat. Before I could say anything. Oh, look at the time. I gotta go now, but hey, see you in LA. If not earlier. She winked at me. She waved and started walking in the other direction. After mumbling some non-intelligible verbal expressions like, hey, yeah, what? Oh, I waved at her and watched her disappear around the corner. And as I was trying to make sense of what just happened, Nicole's teary-eyed face kept coming into my mind. I felt like a complete asshole. What the fuck am I so excited about? I mean, Ella is my bro's girlfriend. She's best friends with my girlfriend. What am I thinking? Why am I suddenly feeling awkward again? I tried not to think about it and started walking away. The next morning was even harder for me. We were on the same bus to the airport, and when it was time to check in for our flight, we were side by side. Naturally, you can't ask to be seated elsewhere when the person you're trying to avoid is right next to you. I couldn't believe that I was thinking about being seated elsewhere too. Ella was not only a friend, she was the only person I had to think of almost as a sister. I kept texting Nicole to make sure that I was okay, reminding myself of who I belonged to. I was scared because it wasn't helping at all, acting like everything is all right. I boarded the plane with Ella. After chatting for a bit with Ella, she fell asleep. After some time, I did too. When I woke up, her head was on my shoulder, and my head was on hers. Her fragrant hair was all over my face. She smelled of vanilla and berries. Her gorgeous scent was so enchanting. I started getting the strongest stiffy of my life. I was unsure about what to do. Do I slowly back off? Do I keep leaning against her head and savor the moment? What the fuck am I thinking? Why is this even an issue? Now, I know there must be a lot of you out there calling me a beta F slur, but if bros before hoes doesn't apply here, then where else? The only thing I was able to do was to raise my head out of her hair and sit upright as best as I could. I couldn't bring myself to pull away from her. Then, as if things couldn't get any worse, she mumbled in her sleep and put her hand on my chest, embracing me as if she was sleeping next to Pete. Her beautiful hand was lightly hanging onto my shirt, her cold fingertips gently grazing my bare chest. This is torture. Pete's voice is ringing in my ears. I love her, man. I fucking love her. The time he told me at a party, watching Ella from the other side of the room. With an admiration and love I haven't seen before on any man's face. Then I remember Nicole again. And the discernment and the loyalty she has displayed time and time again in the face of temptation. I felt like shit. Concentrated, WC clogging brick of shit. An excruciating hour later, she woke up. She blinked her eyes rapidly as she tried to sober up and yawned and stretched. I was losing my mind to the sight of her delicate body as every muscle on her body vibrated and contracted. I was trying to force myself to look away, not notice her, but I couldn't. She looked at me with her sleepy green eyes. Oh, sorry, Anon. I get very untidy in my sleep, she chuckled. Huh, no worries. I tried to match her chuckle nervously. Shortly after that, we landed. Her parents came to welcome her. She introduced me to them. They were nice people, really warm and welcoming. Her mom, after learning that I was going to be alone in LA, invited me to their place. I kindly declined their invitation, telling that my father has already rented an apartment for me. Well, next week, you must at least come have dinner with us then, Ella ordered. Okay then, deal. I accepted her offer with a million questions and ideas racing in my mind. Shortly after we parted ways, I called Nicole and talked to her for an hour, trying to remind myself of who I am, and texted Pete, telling him about Ella and I were on the same flight to LA. I hated myself for feeling that an explanation was necessary. Hey Pete, don't worry buddy. My thing down there, my pee-pee, wasn't fully erect the whole time. She was sleeping on my shoulder, sort of thing. It got hard only when she started stretching her muscles. It's aight. Fuck. I settled at home. Met people at work. It's boring, but it's okay. I'm in LA. Lots of things to do. Lots of free time when I'm not working 9 to 5. And it's only part-time, so I only work 3 days a week. A week later, Ella picks me up from work, and we go to her house like I promised. And everything went better than expected. Her parents are really cool. Lots of drinking, talking, joking around. She has a younger brother, Jake. He is 11. He is a nerd, but he is always handsome in the same way Ella is beautiful. Fucking little man is on his way to becoming a motherfucking 10 out of 10 alpha. I start talking to him. We hit it off really well. I start playing video with him in his room. Ella joins in. I'm like, what? Turns out Ella is a hardcore gamer. Then the feeling returns once more. Ella is sitting between me and Jake, and I'm trying to hide my stiffy under a N64 controller, feeling like I'm cheating on Nicole again. I start drooling as she kicks our asses in Mario Kart. Oh well. Ella rubs Jake's head, and she turns to me and winks. I don't know what you guys were expecting. I forget how to speak English as I see her smug face next to mine, her piercing green eyes, her sharp, pointy nose a couple inches away from me, her cheeks red like apples, the rush and excitement of the game, tiny drops of sweat rolling down on her delicate neck. My mouth is wide open. She starts laughing when she sees my dumb as fuck face. I only play adventure games, Monkey Island, such. I try to bail out. Oh, is that right, Mr. Thurpwood? Ella teases me. Oh, MFG, I'm about to die. Her mom calls us for dessert and coffee. I stay for another hour. Then her dad drives me back to my place. Next week, she called me and asked if I want to hang out. I was afraid of how fast I responded yes. She showed me the sights. We went to her favorite place, eating ice cream, hanging out in cafes and shit. About a month and a half into my stay in LA, I met a couple of her old friends. I could easily see that some of her high school boyfriends were still in her love with her, losing their minds over how lucky they are to see her once again. Some of them even eyeballed me before Ella told them that I was just a friend. Just a friend, she said. And for no reason at all, I felt as if my heart imploded. What's wrong with what she said? Yeah, of course, I was just a friend. It wasn't like I was friend-zoned or anything. She had a boyfriend. I had a girlfriend. So I was just a friend. But I was heartbroken nonetheless. We decided to go to the beach the next week. So next week, 5 of Elle's friends and I were at the beach. 9 out of 10, 10 out of girls with thongs all around us. Everyone is like, who gives a shit? I was the only fuck checking out every piece of ass around us. Ella was wearing those loose summer pants and an old XL white shirt. We find a nice spot, get settled. Then Ella starts getting undressed for the beach. And every person within a 50 feet radius starts looking. 10 out of 10 girls start cringing. I can see how jealous they feel. Men are, I don't even know what word that is. Then I say, fuck it. I'll have to see her body eventually. No escape, and I look at her. Just a pair of jet black bikinis. In them, the most unquestionably beautiful woman there ever was. Her wavy auburn hair streams to her broad but willowy shoulders. Sharp sunlight is glimmering on her bright green eyes. Her face is already tanned. Reddish spots are formed over her soft cheeks, her petite pink lips, and her sharp, small diamond chin, both moisturized by tiny droplets of sweat. The elongated and tender tendons on her neckline flows to the most beautiful and deep jugular notch, surrounded by her sharp clavicles. And then I see them. And then he starts talking about her chest area. Not going to get into that. They stand at attention, he says, amused by the incompetence of frail gravity. He gets into her chest a little bit more, and he's really, really admiring her. And he says, and I admire her chest like they have seen the most beautiful work of art ever created. Then I look down, see her belly, and she's really lean and fits, and that's just the most age-appropriate, just not weird way to describe it. Like, this guy really gets into depth with all of this. Like, Jesus. And he starts to talk about her crotch area, and you can imagine where that goes. And he says she's tanned, and Jesus Christ, I'm just keep reading this and just worse and worse words. But he is really, really loving on this girl, as if you already can't tell. And then let's continue. My eyes were fixed on Ella. Ella looks at me. She leans in with a funny smile on her face. Her breasts come closer to my face than ever before. You are staring, Anon, she says calmly while giggling. My face turns into a Mexican tomato plantation. She walks by me towards the ocean, looks back with a smile warmer than midday sun. You coming? And runs into the lukewarm water while bouncing her perfect body. I'm in a minute. Yeah. I wasn't about to display the biggest tent of my life in front of everyone. She voices a snappy laugh and starts backstroking away from the beach. I sit there and start reciting the multiplication table as if I was already with Nicole in bed, trying to delay the inevitable. Moments later, I join her. Sorry about that before. I apologize sheepishly. Haha, don't worry about it. You should have seen Pete's face when he first saw me in underwear. And we're back to where we started. Good thing my tent is now underwater. I try to speak, but all I'm doing is keeping my mouth open without saying anything. Ella is laughing hysterically. Are you serious, Anon? So serious how? Are you seriously thinking of me in my underwear right now? It comes and goes. What the fuck am I saying? Ella laughs and splashes water to my face. Come on, underwear boy, swim. She starts swimming. I have nothing else to do but follow her. A few moments later, she stops swimming and turns to me. Hey, did you, call Nicole? You guys talking? Yes? Buzzkill. Yeah, why? Good, you keep doing that. Then you can imagine me in my underwear all you want. Okay. She chuckles like a prankster and starts swimming back. My mouth was like a keyboard with coffee spilled all over it. I followed her back to the beach. I spent the rest of the day thinking about Nicole, thinking about Pete, and thinking about Ella. I really didn't have to think about Ella since she was suntanning her gorgeous body next to me. Before everybody went home, Ella asked me if I wanted to hang out with her next weekend. I accepted, naturally. After I went home, my dad called, told me to get ready for a trip. What? Yeah, apparently I was supposed to go to Hong Kong. Turns out my dad is more connected than I previously believed. I had just a week left to spend in LA. Then it was time for Hong Kong. After I spoke to my dad, Pete called. His voice was all fucked up. Told me that Ella broke up with her a week ago. Oh. I switched to bro mode and started calling Ella a bitch and whatnot. Dude, stop, he said calmly. She was right. This wasn't going anywhere. How? What? Look, Anon, I have nothing that I can offer to her. Pete started explaining. He told me how Ella was smarter than him and how it wasn't about relations or intimacy or being an alpha and all that shit. Basically, like everything else about her, Ella was not exactly your usual sorority girl. She was in her own alpha omega fuck you club. And Pete had nothing more than 4 months worth of fashion class and a few dirty jokes to show for an admission. Anyways, thought you should know, man. Take care. And he hung up. I was terrified when I realized my first thought was, now what do I do with Nicole? And my next, what the fuck am I supposed to do in Hong Kong? Next week, I decided to ask Ella about what happened before we went to the museum. We meet, kiss, and hug. Sup, Anon? She's cheerful as usual. Sup, Ella? So, Pete, he called me. Her head becomes apologetically heavy. Sorry for not telling you, Anon. Didn't want you to think less of me before speaking to Pete first. Why? Ella looks at me, feeling stuck between her friendship with me and my friendship with Pete. Wasn't working, Anon. Things don't always work out. What did Pete say about me? Only good things. What did you tell him? Me? I was just trying to be a bro, I guess. Ella pouts. Sorry for putting you in that situation. This is the first time I've seen Ella unable to drive the conversation. She looks way too submissive. I feel bad. Hey, look, it's okay. It's not my place to say anything. I try to comfort her. Ella looks at me, almost waiting for my approval. Then I say, let's move on, shall we? Besides, we have a date. What? Ella blushes. I realize what I've just said and how it might have been so easily misunderstood. Okay. She doesn't push it and saves me from my own demise. We get inside the Natural History Museum and start wandering around aimlessly, without talking. Couldn't tell her that I was leaving for Hong Kong 2 days from now. Both our minds are elsewhere. We get to the prehistoric section, see the dinosaur skeletons, and no, they don't walk. Then we get to the early humans or some other stuff, I don't know. I don't remember why, but we stopped in front of this Neanderthal skull on display. We just look at it. Kind of reminds me of something. You know, this looks somewhat familiar, I say without looking at Ella. Ella doesn't say anything at first, and then she busts out laughing. She loudly cracks an evil laughter in my face of the fucking hall. She looks at me with a funny evil face, with a crackled, badly impersonated manly voice. I am a powerful demonic force. I'm the harbinger of your doom. Let me hear you scream in terror. I'm melting right now. I remember. She gives me a warm smile and starts laughing. I remember why that skull looks so familiar. She's fucking doing Murray from fucking Monkey Island 3. My life is complete. Everyone is looking at us like, WTF is wrong with these people? I get so excited my hands start shaking. Oh, I think I did it a bit too loud, she whispers as she keeps chuckling. You play MI3? I ask her, stammering. Oh, I love it, Anon. She grins. I figured you would remember Murray, you being the adventure gamer and all. I have nothing to say. At that moment, Ella stopped being a crush I could hardly admit to and turned into my life's goal I have no idea what to do with. We start talking about Monkey Island, then Full Throttle, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, all LucasArts games, old school adventures. We were cracking jokes, impersonating key characters, acting out funny moments. It got to the point of singing theme songs. That's when we realized we were sitting next to a prehistoric animal in the middle of a museum, talking about weird games and such like nerds. Security is giving us funny looks. We laughed about it and decided to leave. It was getting late. Sun was about to set. Hey, Anon, come home with me. Have dinner with us again. Ella grabbed my arm and asked me cheerfully. I'd love that. And we went to her house once more. Her parents gladly welcomed me to their home. Jake was in a summer camp or some shit. During dinner, all we could talk about was games and anime, comics, the whole nerd 9 yards. Her mom and dad were giving each other smirky looks. I didn't care. I was losing my mind. Ella, the perfect girl. Ella invited me to her room, and that was the first time I've seen Ella's room. Anime posters on the walls, cute bed sheets with girly flowers and stuff, a whole bookcase full of vidya, her neatly folded clothes everywhere, a full repertoire of fashion Pete studied to understand for a whole semester, a cute and girly elegance, and a hardcore and tomboyish geekdom. The best of both worlds, if there was ever such a thing. I'm at a loss for words, I declare with my mouth wide open. Ella chuckles and playfully punches my shoulder. Shut up. What were you expecting? Wall-to-wall posters of some boy band? Huh. No, I love it. I look around with a huge grin on my face. Good, now I'm gonna beat your ass in Mario Kart again. Sit down. As she forcibly seats me on the floor and in front of a small TV, huge amounts of cute hearts gush out of all of my bodily orifices. Ella goes over to Jake's room and brings the N64, and we start playing. This is heaven. She kicks my ass in Mario Kart again. We switch to SF. She kicks my ass yet again. Next, we try to split screen 007, and guess what? She kicks my ass again. She fires up the PS and starts showing me MGS. I've never played MGS until then. Yeah, don't judge, okay? She starts telling me about the story, going crazy excited, shows me the controls and starts watching as I fumble around, laughs at my stupidity and ineptness every now and then. I play and play, lose myself, immerse myself in the excellence of MGS, then I pause the game and realize that she has fallen asleep with her head on my shoulder. Her sweet vanilla and berry scent filling my lungs once more. She looks peaceful and happy. I quit the game and put down the controller. I gently embrace her exquisite body, putting my arms behind her back and under her beautiful legs. The thin veneer of her skirt rolls back, revealing her thighs. I carefully carry her to bed, tuck her in, just look at her, and appreciate her unbelievable beauty for a moment. It's 3 a.m. Her parents must already be asleep. I don't have any way of returning home. I turn off the TV and the lights, grab a pack of neatly folded shirts and use them as a makeshift pillow, and curl up on the floor. It's hard to fall asleep. The floor is too uncomfy. I hear shuffling behind me. I figured she must have been turning around in her sleep. Then I feel her hand on my back, then over my shoulder, and she rests it on my chest, pulling a thin sheet of blanket over both of us. Her small feet play around and curl up next to mine as she spoons me. I grab her cold hand and press it firmly against my chest. She mumbles and plants her face at the back of my neck, and I fall asleep, madly in love. The next morning when I woke up, she was still sleeping. During the night, we ended up facing each other. When I opened my eyes, I found myself looking at her angelic face. Her hair was all over me. Her hand was still holding onto my shirt, like the time it was back on the plane. I could feel her breath on my lips. I wanted to stay there. More than anything, I wanted to lay next to her forever, and I wanted to kiss her so much. But all I could think was Nicole's face. I carefully reached for my phone in my pocket. Nicole left me a text. Hey you, wanted to surprise you before you go to Hong Kong. I'm in LA. Call me when you wake up. I love you. Smiley face. Oh shit, I go pale. My mouth dries up. My heart starts beating to a fight or flight moment. I gently put Ella's hand down and back off without waking her up. I grab my things and exit the house without anyone noticing. I call Nicole. She tells me to meet her on Venice Beach. Grab a bite to eat on the way. Coffee to wake up. The moment I see her, I realize the mistake I've made. My hair's all messed up. I'm still wearing yesterday's clothes. I didn't even brush my teeth, and my entire body smells like Ella's perfume. It's too late. She sees me and starts running towards me and jumps in my arms. She digs her lips into my mouth, holds me tightly, starts kissing me. Then she slows down and then completely stops. Her hands and arms lose their grasp on me. Slowly, she pulls away. She gently pushes me back to take a better look at me. She sees the guilt and fear on my face. Her pupils dilate. She starts turning red. Her eyes fill with fury and anger like nothing I've seen before. Her right hand pulls back and flies into my face. It lands perfectly. My ears start ringing. My vision is blurred. She doesn't talk. I don't have anything to say for myself. I just stay there with half of my face completely numb. Unable to face her. Unable to look her in the eyes. She slowly turns around and starts walking. Looks back. You come in? She looks at me with tear-filled, mad eyes. I obey and start following her. We sit on a bench overlooking Venice Beach. We sit there for a few minutes before she finally asks me, "Did you sleep with her?" She doesn't look at me. "No." "Did you kiss her?" "No." She stops for a moment. I realize what's coming and it's too late. She turns to me with a face full of tears of anger. You're in love with her?" I can't say anything. I just sit there, my head as low as it can go. "For how fucking long, Anon?" Her voice trembles. "How long?" she asks again, barely audible. "I don't know." She hesitates for a moment and then starts talking again. "I should have known. For the past month, you were all Ella could talk about, Anon." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wake up to the shock of this revelation. She talked to you about me?" I ask her, with a skeptical and messed up face. "Yeah." She opens her eyes wide, sarcastically. "Can you believe that? You became her number one friend, her confidant, her BFF. She violently finger quotes her snappish remark. I don't have anything to say to Nicole. And I can't be angry at her for getting close to you, Anon. She stopped. "But you." She gets close to my face and puts her index finger sharply to my chest. "You should have known better." Tapping my chest with her finger. "Answer me, Anon," she whispers. "Answer me." "What?" I turned to her. She jumped back with a surprise. This was the first time she has seen me scream at anyone, let alone her. "What do you want me to say, Nicole? That I love her? That I care for her? That no matter how I feel about you, I can control how I also feel about her? That even when you and I were just friends and Ella was with Pete, I couldn't help but feel a strong desire for her?" Nicole didn't talk. She just stood there and watched me talk with a heartbroken face. "What do you want me to say, Nicole? What do you want me to say? That the first thing I felt was relief when Pete told me that she broke up with him?" "Okay," she whispered and stared into the distance. We continued to talk, getting angry at each other at times, but it was more upsetting than vexing. After an hour of furious argument, we were tired. Even when pissed off, Nicole didn't hold back her love for me. She got close to me and put her head on my shoulder, and we started watching the sunset. "You know what, Anon?" She spoke kindly, like a whisper. "There isn't enough intimate tricks in the world to keep you away from Ella." I froze. I felt like a sharp object has been pierced through my chest. And there isn't enough small jokes, bouquets of flowers, or boxes of chocolates that Pete can come to her door with. She sighed, so he can hold on to Ella. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. And it's all right, Anon. No matter what we do, you guys were made for each other. She spoke as she gave it into reality. So you go ahead. I told you that you were mine until we both decided otherwise. And we both decided otherwise. You know that. I sat there, with Nicole's head on my shoulder, staring blankly into the crowd of people on Venice Beach. knowing that there's no amount of rights I can make to fix the wrong I did her. The person who loves me so blindly, so vigorously, that even in the moment of her defeat, she still wanted what was best for me. Just do one last thing for me, she whispered. I turned my face to her and kissed her with a passion like I never have. She held my face in her small hands and broke our bond. Go, she said, trying to hold back her tears. Go before I change my mind. Go. She started to cry. Holding her hand, I got up. I hesitantly started stepping away. Our arms stretched and reached their length as our fingertips grazed each other and broke away. I started walking backwards, looking at her, realizing what I have done, feeling like shit. Nicole wasn't looking at me. Her head dropped. The palms of her hands were trying to hide the tears. She was quietly sobbing. I gasped for air and forced myself away from her, trying not to think about it. Running away like an asshole, I must have walked for 3 hours, not knowing what to do. It was getting late. I finally made my decision. I hailed a cab and gave the driver Ella's home address. I arrive at Ella's house. I approach her door, not knowing what to do. I ring the bell. The door stops. My heart stops when I see her. She lowers the cell phone from her ear, looks at me. That was Nicole. She shakes the phone in her hand. Her beautiful green eyes are bloodshot, tears running down her face. She closes the door. Ella, I breathlessly shriek. I turn my back to her door. I start walking and then collapse. I start crying like a bitch. This is just too much. First Nicole and now Ella. The door quietly clicks open again. The afternoon sun casts a shadow over me. The shadow eagerly waits. What did she say to you? I can barely speak. That you love me more than her? You stupid fuck. A cold hand grabs my collar and pulls me with force. I stumble and walk to Ella's door, following her stern pace. Tears and snot on my face, ugly as fuck. As I pass through the doorway, she turns around, violently slams the door with a flick of her hand, and pins me to the shut door with force, stuffs my face with her lips. My heart is beating like a jackhammer. She just stays frozen, her lips nailed to mine, her chilled hands hanging from my collar. Her intense kiss gently becomes tender, and she stops kissing me. Clumsily wipes my wet face with her hands, sporadically chuckling her heart out while crying tears of joy. You look like shit, she laughs nervously. I smile and laugh. Come on, you need a shower. She drags me to her bathroom and gives me fresh towels. I take a shower for an hour, trying to calm my nerves, trying to make sense to this calamity. I take way longer than usual, knowing that when I get out, I'll have to face her and have a talk. I finally get out and wrap myself with her towels. Go to her room. Ella is in her PJs. Her hair is wet. She must have had a shower too. She's sitting on her bed all curled up, holding onto her legs. She has a deeply concerned look on her face. I sit next to her and stare at the wall, expecting a million questions. She simply says, "Go ahead. Say it." I don't understand. I mean, say what? Say it. She tells me again with a calm voice. I love you. Good. She puts her hands on my face and her lips on mine and gives me the warmest, most gentle kiss I could have imagined. We fall back to the bed. She embraces me. While her freezing hands caress my skin like ice, her hot, soft lips brush against my face like a velvet cloth. I hold her tightly. She opens her arms and lays back, presents herself to me with an innocent smile on her face. I take my time and study with her. I don't want to rush anything. My parents are gone for the day. We're all alone, she sings playfully. And then you know where this is going, and I'm not going to read this anymore because this is a lot of physical stuff, and yeah, they get freaky, majorly freaky. And I'm not reading this because we're just not that type of channel. This is a sad and scary stories channel, and so yeah, geez, I'm just reading through this, skimming through. Nope, not gonna read this. But apparently they love it. Obviously, this guy's in love with her. OP's in love with her. And Ella seems to like him. I can't tell off of Ella. But then it was almost dawn when they woke up. Ella woke up with me. I have to tell you something, I told her. She looked at me, scared and upset. I have to go to Hong Kong for 2 months. Today. I won't be able to spend the rest of the summer with you. Whatever she was expecting, hearing this news relieved her. She sighed and planted a passionate kiss on my cheek. It's okay. We'll see each other in school, she whispered to me softly. After all, I have you now. I couldn't have been happier. Hong Kong seemed like a punishment after everything that has happened, but I knew Ella would wait for me. Ella sent me away, convinced me that if we spent even more time, or if she would come to LAX to see me off, the distance and time would be even harder to bear. I agreed. As I was dragging my feet to leave her, I kissed her so much she had to physically push me away, giggling with a sleepy face. Go now. Go or you will miss your flight. I went home, hastily packed my bags, and left for the airport. All I could think of was her. The cab driver had to ask me where to like 3 times. After I landed and got settled in Hong Kong, we started talking on Skype. It was new back then and the connection was shitty, but it was way better than nothing. Every day we would talk, sometimes for hours. There was so much time difference. I was almost an entire day ahead of LA, but we made it work. Our intimacy was not limited to just intimacy in real life, and our friendship was more than just ambiguous flirting. The things we shared, the moments we lived, even though they were digital and thousands of miles apart, I was still in heaven. A month later, I came home from work one day, and there was no response to my calls. I figured she must be busy, or out, or something else came up. Didn't think much of it, and went on with the rest of my day. Next day, same thing. Well, unless you are a seriously paranoid person, you don't think of worst case scenarios until your buddy calls you. Didn't remember how I responded to that. I still don't. I only know what Pete, Mom, and Dad told me. Turns out, I dropped the phone and was unreachable for an hour. Don't know what happened in that hour. Then they say that I called my folks. By then, Pete told them already, and they knew I wasn't going to be able to make my way back on my own. As I was speaking to or screaming to Mom, Dad was already buying plane tickets. I didn't realize my mom was crying on the phone, knowing her son was in so much panic and she was unable to help me. I was screaming so much, my voice was all but gone. At some point, my dad picked up the phone, trying to calm me down. Years later, I asked him once, just once, what happened that day. Never seen a man that white as he told me what happened. How terrified he was over how I was feeling. I asked him because the only thing I could remember was Pete telling me, "She's gone. She's gone." I talked to Pete one more time before Dad arrived. That I do remember. You go numb after so much pain and start behaving like a robot. He knew I wasn't going to be at the ceremony with him. We talked about things no one wants to know. But you just have to know. Like what happens to a car traveling at 60 miles an hour when it gets rear-ended by another car. Starts spinning and stops when it wraps around a telephone pole. There was nothing anyone would want to look at. No open casket. Just a box. While her family was burying Ella, I was on a plane back to the States. Didn't have the power to go to LA and be there with her family. Didn't want to go back to college and be all by myself. I just wanted to go home. A year has passed since Ella's death. Mom and Dad were trying to play it cool. Pete was the only one keeping me sane. He too was affected by Ella's passing. But he was stronger. He didn't love Ella the way I did. Nicole was keeping her distance, avoiding me as best as she could. On the anniversary of her death, I decided to visit Ella's grave. Got on a plane to LA. I still remember the first time I walked through those cemetery gates. It's never easy to visit the dead. I found her and stayed there for an hour, just crying, not knowing what to say. I'm not a religious person, and I don't believe in the afterlife. I had this feeling inside me that no matter what I said, she wasn't there to see or hear. After a while, a boy walked up to me. Her brother. Young Jake, too, came to visit her sister. We hugged. You should come and visit my folks, Anon. They'll be happy to see you. I accepted his kind invitation. When we arrived at their home, the air was thick, filled with sorrow. Her mother smiled when she saw me, held me in her arms as if I was her own blood. "Oh, am I so happy to see you," she cried. They were relieved they didn't have to be alone that day. Ella's father was already half drunk, but he was joyful when we started talking about Ella. Jake was sitting between his mom and dad. They wouldn't let go of his hands the entire time, drawing power from knowing that they were not alone, and that Jake is still here. After talking about Ella, reminiscing what little time I was able to spend with her, her mom showed me into Ella's room. The room was left untouched. Nothing was changed since I've been there more than a year ago. Even her neatly folded clothes were still on her chair, her video archived, her anime posters on the wall. Her mom opened a drawer and took out a CD case and a letter and handed them to me. "I believe these are for you, Anon." She put them into my violently shaking hands. She kisses me on the forehead and left the room. I sat on the bed in which we had the chance to spend a single night together. A single night. I looked at the CD case and immediately burst into tears I was holding back before. Crying my eyes out, I started reading her letter. The letter she couldn't send to Hong Kong. Pick-related letter and the CD case, and we'll get into those in just a moment. After I read the letter, I was in the fetus position on her bed, crying. The love and the loss were too much. Someone slowly sat next to me, and I felt a familiar hand on my face. I put my head on her lap while Nicole caressed my hair and calmed me down. "I'm here," she whispered, and hugged me as she too quietly cried. And then the OP posts 2 pictures, one of the curse of Monkey Island and the inside, and then a picture of the letter. And let's read the letter that Ella was supposedly going to send to the OP. It reads, "I hope you're doing well in Hong Kong. I miss you, and I'm cheerfully assuming that you miss me too." Smiley face. "But surprise, I got something for you. Unfortunately, this was the only copy I could find. It's a pirated version I got from ex-Bulgarian guy on eBay. He works just fine. If you get bored and tour longing becomes unbearable, imagine yourself in the Caribbeans, and I'll help you save Ekin from the curse. Love from LA. Your hooray, Ella." And then the final post from the OP reads as follows. "Next semester, Nicole and I got closer. She stopped avoiding me, and we became friends again. She understood what I've been through, and although I've broken her heart, she knew I didn't mean to. She knew how much I loved Ella. She knew the love I felt for Ella didn't mean I didn't value her. 2 years later, we started dating again. Moved to Chicago together. Another 2 years after that, we got married. And I slowly forgot about Ella. While organizing old stuff at our house, I came across Ella's letter and the MI3 CD case. When I started feeling bad, she convinced me to write the story down so I could get it off my chest. "I don't want to read it," she said with a sad face. "It'll be too much for me, but you have to write it down." Her love and care were heavenly. "You need this, Anon." I accepted. Last night, after I finished writing my story, Nicole convinced me to frame Ella's letter. I looked at her. I was almost about to cry. She gently held my face in her hands. "It's good to remember, Anon." And she planted a tender kiss on my lips. She was a good person. You loved her and she loved you. I don't even know what to say. I framed the letter and put it on my nightstand. We got under the blankets on a cold winter night. We cuddled. She embraced me and placed her hand on my chest and softly whispered into my ear, "You're mine, Anon. and I'm yours. And as I've said before, she was almost asleep, with an amorous smile on her face. Until such a time comes we both decide otherwise, nothing will change that. And I fell asleep next to the woman I loved, embracing the woman that loves me. And this is the end of my story. And I can kind of see why people call it one of the greatest green texts of all time. I mean, it's just such an emotional roller coaster. It starts out with him loving her, and then it ends out working out. And the day they do the deed, he leaves, and then she dies in a horrible car accident. Just wow. And it just feels so real to me and true, because I mean, most people during a traumatic time can't remember the details, and during the details he couldn't portray it that well. So it seemed very true to me, very authentic, and very sad. But just wow, that's just a crazy story. I mean, this was not a usual Snook scary story for you, but it's a green text classic, so I thought I had to read it for you guys. And I found a interesting post of someone saying, taking a look at the Ballad of Ella, true story or fake. And so we're going to get into that for everyone who thinks that's a fake story versus true. So let's get into this post. Someone says, in case you have not read the Ballad of Ella yet, I highly recommend you do so. Now, if you did, you might wonder whether or not that story truly happened. While I cannot say so without certainty, I did try my best to find out, as there didn't seem to be any information in that regard. Let's start with what information we have. The original post was from 2015, and Anand said 10 years ago when he was 19 and a freshman. It might be he is referring to the start of the story, freshman year being 10 years ago, or the second semester, i.e. the start of the story being 10 years ago. Depending on that, the year Ella died would be either 2005 or 2006. Pete had taken fashion classes for 4 months. Summer came, Anand and Ella spent about 2 months together in LA. At one point he writes, that night, Ella wasn't a couple months old friend. It's safe to assume the time frame of the story is about half a year. That puts Ella's death somewhere between the end of June and the end of August. She died in a car accident in California, somewhere in or around Los Angeles. As Anand seemed to lodge so far from Ella's place, he had to be picked up and dropped off every time with no other option. We cannot be 100% sure it was Los Angeles. Finally, we cannot be sure that Ella was her real name. Even though it was on the letter, it might be short for Elizabeth or other similar names. What we were looking for, a young 18 to 21 year old with a possible nickname Ella who died in a car accident in 2005 or 2006 in California. Give him props so far. This is crazy detective work. And then he continues saying, looking for Los Angeles car accident, death 2005, or fatal car accident, Los Angeles 2005 teen, yields no success. Narrowing the search to articles from the years 2005 to 2006 doesn't turn up anything useful either. Neither does including all of California. Browsing obituaries for the year 2005 will show that no Ella under 35 died. Neither did one in 2004, 2006, or 2007. Given she might not actually be named Ella, I started looking into death records of people aged 18 to 21 who died in California. Lo and behold, about 200 people between 18 and 21 found their untimely death in 2005, but not one of them bears a name you can shorten to Ella, save for 2 Michelles, who died on the 10th of August at age 18, but was cremated and had no brother, and said she had a half dozen sisters, which already rules her out. And another Michelle who died end of July 2005. Problem with her is that she doesn't appear anywhere else. No car accident news, no obituary, nothing. Also, the story makes no mention of a birthday, which is important because this Ella would have had hers a week later. All that and the fact that she was only 17, a bit too young to go off state to university, makes it unlikely this is the story's Ella. Death records for 2006 yielded about 250 kids between 18 and 21 who died. Only one of them could have had a name that would fit Ella. That person last name was Elizabeth, age 21, who died on August 29th in a car accident. Though it was no perfect match, in the story, Anand was told that Ella had died or been rear-ended by another car, while this Ella was hit by a wrong-way driver. It can, however, very well be said that she tried to evade the oncoming car, which led to it hitting the rear, spinning her into a telephone pole. I'd count that as rear-ending. Did I mention this was in the interstate? Ella was hit at 60 miles an hour. Either way, both accidents ended in a way where an open casket doesn't seem like an option. She also had a sister, not a brother from what I found, which is a detail too big to get wrong. Conclusively, it can be said that the story might actually be true. Unlikely, yes, but there is a person who would fit Ella's age, time, and the cause of death. Personally, I thought it was fake until I went back and took a closer look at the time the original post was made, which made me question if the events really took place in 2005. The person fits nearly all of the criteria so well that even though Ella as a person seems impossible, I cannot deny the possibility of the story being true. I doubt it though. And so, I mean, a lot of you guys were going to speculate in the comments either way, so that kind of shortens it. Someone did the research. But I didn't mean to, jump the gun so fast. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Ella's death or speculate on it, but I just thought it was worth adding so you guys didn't need to do it in the comments. But very different story than usual. I mean, it was more like a romance novel for 95% of it. So did you guys enjoy it? Did you guys not enjoy it? What were your guys' thoughts? I just thought it was a very good story, and I thought it was worth the read because it was just so different than usual. I mean, it was not a sad story or not a scary story per se, but it was definitely a sad story. And I just thought it was a great story, to be honest. But her death just came out of nowhere and was so crushing. And the OP was a great writer. I mean, the dialogue was great. The descriptions of the girls was a little bit weird, but what can you do? It's 4chan after all. But yeah, people classify that as one of the greatest green texts ever. So comment down below if you haven't heard it before. I've never read it before, so that was new for me. Hopefully new for you. And if you enjoyed this video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, join me on Patreon, follow me on Spotify, follow me on Instagram, all that jazz. And if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy other videos on the channel, so check out those. I appreciate you so much. Comment down below your thoughts on the video. I read every single comment. Thank you so much for watching. It means the world. And this is Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some unnerving Reddit horror stories. You guys have been loving the Reddit horror stories, and I have loved recording them. I love these long story videos. They're so entertaining, scary, weird, and like the title says, unnerving. So these stories will be great and you'll want to stick around. And I just want to say thank you so much for stopping by. It means the world. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Spotify, and like and subscribe here, like I said. And yeah, this video will be long enough already. So without further ado, let's get into some unnerving Reddit horror stories. The Lady Upstairs, written by LooseAd723. After 36 years of living in an apartment complex, I can confidently attest that a night owl is the worst kind of neighbor. Being as lucky as I am, I had one of those moving into the apartment right above mine at the start of October. It was a lady who seemed to have an endless supply of worldly goods that all needed to be put into place the moment she moved in. Every single evening at 9 p.m. exactly, she would either start hammering away, drilling the walls, or pushing furniture across her floors, always managing to reach the noise level of an angry bull in heat. I've always had quite sensitive ears, so I'm no stranger to being awoken at night because of bothersome noises. There is always noise in the city, whether from drunkards singing at the top of their lungs or nocturnal critters running amok in the streets. Trust me, the sheer number of times I've been woken up by an opossum knocking over a trash can outside my house is ridiculous. The thing is, these disturbances would always be occasional and brief whenever they occurred. I could easily fall back asleep afterwards, but ever since the day that lady moved in, the night has been filled with constant sounds of her mayhem. The cacophony upstairs would go on every evening for about 3 to 4 days in a row. Then at some point, I would hear a large thudding sound, indicating that she had brought out yet another box full of stuff that needed to be set up. This routine sent me into a hellish cycle of exhaustion. I'd fall asleep late and wake up exhausted in the morning. I would then have to drown myself in coffee and go to work, hoping that I could get some sleep later in the evening. Don't tell me that I just should have confronted her. I didn't want her to think I was just some cranky old man. Besides, I don't really like confronting people. I've always felt awful whenever I've had to reprimand someone. I also didn't know her name, which I felt like would have made the interaction even more unbearable. I just sat on my couch, waiting for the commotion to stop. Suddenly, 3 weeks had passed, and she showed no signs of being finished unpacking. The seeds of chaos were planted as the clock struck 9 p.m. on an unusually hot evening in late October. An evening so hot that I had to have my windows open to be comfortable. The lady upstairs started toiling away, following her usual schedule. It was just as loud as all the other days. I twisted and turned in my bed, trying to cover my ears with my pillow, as I'd done so many nights before. But this night was different. The heat mixed with my drowsiness and the sounds from upstairs all compiled into a thundering migraine. It felt as if my brain was swelling, trying to crack my head open and run away to escape the noise. I couldn't take it any longer. I sat up in my bed, inhaled all the air that I could fit in my lungs, and yelled, "Quiet!" My yelling was followed by a large thud from upstairs. She had just started unpacking another box. I thought to myself, I couldn't believe it. She had to have heard me. My yelling was so loud that they probably heard me all the way up on the 5th floor. I stared at my ceiling, awaiting the sounds of the troublemaker and her orchestra from hell. I waited, and then I waited some more. More time passed, but there were no more sounds coming from upstairs. Maybe she did hear me. Maybe she was finally being respectful. I felt my headache subside as I lay back down. I closed my eyes, letting my fatigue carry me towards slumber. I was completely unbothered for the first time in a long time. I rose with the sun several hours later, and I didn't have to chug half a liter of coffee to stay awake. I went to work with a smile on my face and a good feeling in my body. Everything was easier. I was happier. It was paradise compared to before. I came home that evening, hoping that the night before wasn't an exception. If only I had been that lucky. After the sun had gone down, there was activity in the upstairs apartment again. This time, though, the sounds were a bit different. All I could hear was bump, 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 repeated over and over again. I couldn't place the sound. It didn't come from any tool that I know of. I was sure of that. There were irregular pauses between the sounds, ranging from about 5 seconds to 10 seconds. It wasn't just heavy footsteps, that was for sure. The spaces between them were too big. It wasn't a hammer either. The sounds were much too quiet for that. This thought process continued as I lay in my bed that night, my wary eyes fixated on the ceiling. Maybe she's tapping her foot on the floor to a song, but the sounds are not rhythmical in the slightest. Maybe she's dropping a ball repeatedly, but why would she even do that? Is she a juggler? No, that'd be ridiculous. These were but some of the thoughts rushing through my head as the sounds kept resonating in the background. It was beyond the midnight hours before I fell asleep that night. When I woke up in the morning, the noises had stopped. I assumed that she had just started working on her apartment again. Throughout the whole day, at my work and when I went home, I silently prayed that I wouldn't hear those sounds from her apartment again. Even though they were less noisy than normal, there was something about not being able to identify them that just made them much more annoying. To my dismay, however, the noises had begun anew by the rising of the moon. Bump, bump, bump. Lying in my bed that night, I was gritting my teeth out of sheer annoyance. I covered my head with my pillow again, but it was no use. I could still hear the sounds no matter how much I tried to keep them out. They made me feel as if someone was constantly poking at my brain, molding it like a piece of clay. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe, just maybe, she was mad about my yelling and was doing this to get back at me. Maybe she just wanted to drive me nuts with her antics. I tried to fall asleep, but it wasn't happening. The sounds from upstairs echoed in my head, much louder than any of the sounds that had been there in the weeks before. It was pure agony. My heart skipped a beat as my phone started ringing. I cautiously picked it up, wondering who was calling in the middle of the night. Hello? I mumbled. Peterson, where the fuck are you, man? We've been waiting for you for 45 minutes. Oh, hello, sir. I'm sorry, but my shift doesn't start till... I looked towards my window. The rays of sunlight had already broken through and cast light onto my floor. Shit. Sorry, sir. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I said as I got out of bed and hung up the phone. What followed was one of the worst days I've ever had in my life. I was a walking corpse with only one thing on my mind. What were those sounds? I eventually got home and I didn't care about relaxing. Relaxation wasn't even on my mind. All I wanted to do and all I did was await the sounds. I sat on my couch, staring at the ceiling, and like clockwork, the commotion started back up late into the evening. Bump, bump, bump. I couldn't take it another night. It was torture. I didn't care what she thought of me anymore. I didn't care about having to scold her. I stormed out of the door and up the stairs and pounded on the door. What is your fucking problem? The sound stopped, but I wasn't satisfied. They were going to start again. I wasn't fooled. I turned the door handle and walked inside. Her apartment was cold like night and as silent as a library. I walked into the living room and that's where I found her. She was lying on her back at the foot of a small stepladder. She lay beside the corner of a wooden table. The corner was covered in a mixture of dried brown blood and long black hairs. On the side of her head was a crater of blood, hair, skull fragments, and brain matter. Both of her arms were mangled to the bone. A swarm of flies was nesting on her body. The windows in the living room stood open, taking in the autumn breeze and wafting away any smell of rot there should have been. As I stood there, taking it all in, I heard some skittering. I stared in disbelief as a chubby little form crept out from one of the moving crates on the floor, where it had likely been hiding from all the noise I'd made. It was a possum, currently unaware of my presence. It crawled over the body and started gnawing at the hand. Every time the possum ripped off a piece of flesh, the hand was lifted into the air before subsequently dropping to the floor, producing a light bump. I haven't slept since 2023. Written by Sad or Dead. He writes great stories on Reddit, so go check out his page. And now into the story. Growing up, I had two choices in life. I could follow in my father's footsteps as a farm equipment maintenance worker. It was a decent job with decent pay, but I always got this sense of dread whenever I walked by his workshop. It was this big, windowless building in a pale green color, and I always had this feeling that if I stayed there for too long, that place would eat me alive. So I went with the other choice in life, my mother. She was always larger than life, and she wanted me to be too. She was all about the hustle. When she and my father went separate ways, she took me and my sister across the country to Bangkok. She was the embodiment of Ot Prio Wa Kin Wan, roughly translated to endure the sourness and enjoy the sweetness later. She would take any job at any time and claw her way upward. So my sister and I turned out the same. We would work, study, and socialize. We were supposed to be everything at once: smart, strong, cultural, and opinionated. I studied computer science at night and worked delivery during the day. I got a pretty good eye for traffic, so I could make it around the city without fearing for my life. That's easier said than done. Traffic laws around here seem to be more of a suggestion rather than a law. I also did the odd job making websites for friends, family, and acquaintances. That would eat up most of my weekend nights. And finally, the one job that never paid me anything: looking out for my sister. My sister Isra worked as a club and event promoter in the inner city. She mostly worked weekends and nights, and I'm the only one she trusts to watch her back. If someone bothered her, I'd be on call. If she needed a sudden ride home, I'd be on call. I'd get yelled at for being late, or for not responding fast enough, or for 1,000 different reasons. It was by far the worst job I'd ever had. But family is family. I'd be working so much that the only time my friends would see me was when I came around to pick up Asura. They started to call me Lon or Lurk, something you would say when it's time to close for the night. I was the closing time guy. When I showed up, it was time to go home. Not the most fun nickname to be stuck with in your early 20s. When my mother passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2020, I'd just turned 21. I was put in a position where I had to support both myself and my sister economically. Sure, she pulled part of her weight too, but she was looking ahead. She wanted to work in cosmetology, especially in movies and TV shows. That would take money and time. So for a while there, I had a lot of sudden weight put on my shoulders. Studies, work, more work, and being there for Isra. I barely slept, and when I did, I'd wake up at the slightest sound. I was so used to sleeping lightly, waiting for my sister to call for a pickup, but I didn't have a lot of choices. I had to keep going, for everyone's sake. So I made a plan. I just had to make it until I was done with my studies. I looked for temporary solutions. I'd take caffeine pills, but they ended up giving me a stomach ache. I tried this dextrose drink from a local pharmacy, but that thing almost gave me arrhythmia. I didn't want to try any heavier stuff, so I kind of gave up hope. Then I met a guy named Samyat. Samyat is a nice guy in the wrong kind of business. About 10 years older than me, but 30 years older at heart. To this day, I'm not sure what he really does, apart from co-managing a couple of downtown clubs. I think he buys things from places you shouldn't. Some kind of gray area importer. He was a part owner of a club where Isra worked on the weekend. The first time I met him, he was sitting outside the club with a cold beer, having a cigarette. He didn't look like the owner, so I sat down next to him to tie my shoe. He looked me up and down. "You just gonna sit down like that?" he asked. "You got an appointment?" "I need an appointment for a chair?" "For my chair, yeah." "You the boss?" "I'm a boss, yeah." I was too tired to care, and frankly, getting my sister fired from that place would have made my life easier, so I looked right back at him. "You don't look like a boss to me." I didn't know if he was gonna hit me or hire me, but he ended up belly laughing and offering me a cigarette, so I guess I made the right choice. I would spend about 1 or 2 nights a week at Samyat's club. He'd offer me a job, but the pay was awful, and I was busy with other things. I literally didn't have enough hours of the day to work for him. I think that was for the best, though. He was a great guy to hang out with, but he must have been an awful boss. Cheap bastard. Samyat had some sympathy for me, though. I was working hard to make ends meet, and he respected the hustle. He offered me a couple of side gigs. For example, picking up leftover credit cards at ATMs. There's a kind of ATM that takes a long time for the card to come back out, so a lot of tourists think it ate them, so they leave the card behind. Samyat paid a little for each card I could bring him, so I would walk around and pick them up while waiting for Isra to finish work. Every little bit helps. We developed a good friendship. I would show up an hour or so before Isra needed to pick up just to hang out with Samyat. We'd usually talk just about movies, cars, girls, whatever came to mind. I didn't have a lot of people in my life I could just talk to about nothing. And I didn't think he did either. We'd usually end up having a beer and chew betel nuts. They're these nuts that wrap in a leaf and chew. It gives you a pick-me-up that makes your mouth burn. It sums up Samyat pretty well. Legal, but spicy. But things took a turn when I was invited to a private party of his. See, I'd been up for 27 hours straight at that point. I've been working on a large project for my computer science class, and I've been hoping to get a couple of extra hours in at the delivery company. That, and a client needed me to redo their homepage after it got hacked. It was a perfect storm of a lot of little things all at once, and it drove me to exhaustion. But I still got to Samyat's party. He had a nice place outside of town. He'd invited some people from the club and some business associates. He had these parties about once every 6 months or so. It was a way to show appreciation and brag a little. Still, Samyat had pulled out all the stops. He'd felt sorry for me, seen me work so hard, and he'd brought a guy there from a research institute. They needed people for a data entry job, and he thought it'd be my kind of thing. Problem is, I was so tired I looked like I was on drugs. I didn't even understand the guy was offering me a paid position. As the party died down, Samyat took me aside and sat me down for a chat. We chewed some betel nuts and he took off his sunglasses. The man didn't look me in the eyes a lot, so I knew something was up. "I worry about you," he said. "You're working too hard." I'm sorry," I said. "It's not that I don't appreciate this, but I just had so much to do." "Then tell me," he continued. "Tell me how I can help." "You don't need to do anything," I said. "I'm just glad to have a friend, you know?" I could see the wheels turn in his head. His eyes welled up a little. He gave me a hug and took me out of the veranda overlooking the city. He patted me on the back. "You deserve better," he said. "I'll get you something better." The following weekend, I got a text from Samyat. He was excited to show me something. He usually had something to share, but this time seemed different. I was a bit anxious about seeing him, but it was a nice change of pace. So that Saturday, I was invited into the club. I went straight past the bouncer, through the dance floor, and into the back rooms. From there, I followed a corridor to a small office at the back of the building. After all I'd seen from Samyat, I expected something grander, but it was just a little office with an old laptop, a USB fan, a couple chairs, and a shitty TV in the corner, all accentuated by a couple of early 2000s posters of women in bikinis posing with cars. Samyat was smiling ear to ear and waved me over. He opened a safe under his desk and pulled out a small box of white pill bottles. They were all sealed and unmarked, except for a small blue sunflower print on the cap. He sat me down and took a bottle out of his pocket to show me. "This is gonna help," he said. "Trust me." I don't do drugs, boss." "I know you don't. This isn't that." He showed me his phone and a conversation he'd had with the guy from the party, the one from the Research Institute. Apparently, he'd managed to get his hands on a couple of cases of an off-market stimulant. "I tried it myself," he said. "Going on 2 weeks now. It's a little miracle." "What does it do? What's the catch?" "No need to sleep anymore," he smiled. "1 pill, you're good to go for at least 18 hours. "No way." "You might need another hour or so to recover when you finally go to bed, but apart from that, it's perfect. Doesn't make your piss smell, doesn't fuck up your hair, nothing." "No way," I repeated. Too good to be true. Samyat sat down at his desk across from me, giving me a long look. "You won't let me get you a better job," he said. "Let me get you this, as a friend." I could tell he was being genuine. You could say a lot about Samyat, but he'd always been honest with me. I swallowed my fears and picked up one of the pills. I don't know," I said. "There's got to be a catch." "Never more than 1 a day," he said, "or you'll get sick. And no more than 2 days at a time, maybe 3, but then you'll probably get a headache. Oh, and no drugs." "What do you mean?" "There's a list of things drugs it reacts with, but you don't do that stuff, so you're good." "What about caffeine?" "As long as you don't pour stuff like..." Samyat picked up a small piece of paper and looked it over, reading from the list, and then a bunch of different hard drugs, crystal, booger sugar, etc. "There goes my Friday night." "Funny," Samyat scoffed. "If you don't want it, it's fine, but..." No, I'll try one." And so I did. Taking that first pill was like breathing in after a deep dive. I felt lighter, but not high. I was just well rested, ready to take on the day. But there was also a slight chill to it, like a cold breath sweeping across my nerves. I looked at Samyat like I was seeing him for the first time. He got up and slapped his hands together with a grin. "I knew it," he said. "I knew this would be it." "How much?" I asked. "For a bottle, how much?" "Take it," he smiled, pushing over the whole case. Guy owed me a favor. "Really? You're giving it away?" "I'm just glad to have a friend." That night was the first time I stuck around to party with Samyat. For real. The man was a force of nature. He downed shots like they were water. He knew all the best food vendors on the block by name, and he'd ping-pong from after party to after party without breaking a sweat. I was just along for the ride. We ended up drunk on a beach, watching the sunrise. Not a blink of tiredness in our eyes. Our day was just getting started. No need for beetle nuts to keep us going. I wouldn't need those ever again. "Next, you're gonna get a woman," he murmured. "Then a job, a great job. You can fix anything, huh?" "That's why I'm the boss." "I don't want to owe you anything," I said. "You get that, right?" You don't owe me anything." Kind of feels like I do. He asked me to show him the phone. I did, and he scrolled down to his number on the contact list. He tapped it, hovering his finger over the delete button. "You can delete me today and never call me again, and that's up to you." Really? Really? He handed me the phone back and turned his attention to the sun. "But for as long as you feel like it, I'm here," he continued. "No strings." "No strings?" He shrugged and slid his final beer my way. It's just nice to be the good guy for once. The next day, lying in my bed, I was scared. I had no idea how my body would respond. It was a make or break moment where I'd find out if Samyat had screwed me over or if he'd really helped me out. I had a whole case of those pills stashed away in the closet, more than enough to keep me going for months. But I took his advice. Every 2 or 3 days or so, I'd give it a rest. So when I went to sleep that night, I didn't know what to expect. I had strange dreams. I dreamt I woke up in this barren world with a dead tree towering in the distance. There were no stars in the sky. It was desolate, but peaceful in a way. And I dreamt that there was someone there, in the dark. Someone looking for me. But I woke up long before they found me. I was a bit worked up, but it was just a dream. Those fleeting images rolled out of my mind faster than it took me to make breakfast. From that moment on, I decided to give these things a go. I would rest every 3 days or so, but until then, I was constantly on the go. I could work as many hours as I wanted. I could be up all night finishing projects left and right. I never missed a call from Asira. I could keep up with demands, and I could do it comfortable, without side effects. Sure, whenever I crashed, I'd dream about that place again. The dead tree, reaching for the moon, the desolate ruins, and somewhere out in the eternal night, something was looking for me, but it never had the time to find me. I'd always wake up long before it did. It was comfortable, efficient, and I could do it all. I had time to work a little with Samyat. Not anything big, but just little odd jobs here and there. He was fair, but didn't pay much. But then again, I was making more money than I knew how to spend. I got a second chance at an interview with Samyat's guy at the Research Institute, and that time around, I nailed it. It was just a low-level data entry job, but I could do it remotely, and it paid almost twice as much as my delivery job. I had to brush up on my English, but that wasn't a big deal. Isra and I had to learn it early on in our lives. My mother made sure of it. Isra had saved up enough money for her cosmetology classes, so I got some more time to focus on other things. I invested some time in a startup app with some guys from my classes, and we made some solid progress. Overall, things looked pretty good. Weeks turned into months, and months eventually turned into an entire year. I still had plenty of pills left, and I got into a healthy routine. I slept better, I ate better, and I had so much more time on my hands. It got to the point where I couldn't imagine going back to life without those pills. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what that place in between the wakeful world and my dreams was. That place in the starless night with the dead tree in the distance. Who were the dark shapes roaming the fields of black sand, and who was out there looking at me? I wouldn't think about it too much. I chalked it up as a weird side effect, but not much else. It didn't affect my everyday life, so why should I care? Fast forward to 2023. I was co-owner of a small company. No more data entry. We had an office and 5 employees. My nickname still stuck around, but it was more or less sarcastic. I was no longer the guy who showed up at the end of it all. I was the first in line. I would plan my come downs in a way that people never noticed. I had this reputation of working around the clock, and people just couldn't figure it out. I didn't share my secret with anyone. I figured there'd be some serious consequences if those pills got in the wrong hands. My sister worked a nice job at one of the local malls. One of the really big ones, not just any old mall. It was very well paid, and she could support herself more than enough. She ended up moving in with a guy, and I got a place of my own. I could finally take a step up and get myself something nice. I still spend time with Samyat. He was the only other person in the world that knew of the pills. He'd stopped taking them though. He found them too distracting when it came to keeping a schedule. He was going steady with a lady named Wan Wan, and he hated seeing her go to bed on her own. It was surprisingly sweet. And more pills for me, so win-win. In February of 2023, my sister got married. It was bad timing since I had a huge project to work on at the time. So even with all my available time, it was still not enough. So I had to do something Samya advised against. I had to keep going for 5 days straight. Just 2 days more than the ordinary 3, but still. Now, I didn't immediately notice anything. It worked just fine. But when I finally crashed, after almost a full week without sleep, I had the most awful nightmares of my life. Not only was I back there, in that desolate space, I could feel it. The black sand creeping into my shoes. The howling of people in pain. I thought I heard gunfire too. What little vegetation lived there was twisted into a midnight blue, just like the blue sunflower on the cap of the bottle. But this time, there wasn't just something in the dark looking for me. No, it was hunting. I have this vivid memory of crawling through the sands of an old ruin, hearing something closing in. Despite the sand, it was wet, vicious. It made this disgusting sound, like a crowd of large men struggling for breath all at once. I would hear it touch its way across the ruins, looking for me, and everywhere it touched, something sizzled, like burning acid. It tried to speak. I know it did, but it couldn't. It had too many tongues, and they all tried to speak at once. Eventually, it found me. I couldn't look. I couldn't breathe. I could feel the size of it without even looking as it loomed over me. I tried making myself small, but it didn't matter. It sighed, like it had enjoyed a cold glass of water on a warm summer's day. It was so pleased to find me. And as it moved closer, I heard something dripping, sizzling into the sand. There was a powerful smell of ammonia and something akin to mothballs. It touched my arm, and it burned into my skin. It burned so bad that I woke up. And when I did, I had a burn. A coin-sized black mark with gangrenous flesh tightening the skin of the arm, stinging with every flex of my tricep. That place was real. That thing had to be real. For a full week after that, I kept feeling like I'd been seconds from death. I had a doctor check out my arm, but he couldn't make sense of it. It was an acid burn, but it behaved like a frostbite. In the end, he had to make a small procedure to remove the dead skin, but it was overall fine. I just had to keep it clean and bandaged and be prepared for a nasty scar. But that thing had been so vivid. Days later, I could still smell it. I remember this one time when I was taking a shower, when I had to turn off the water. I thought I heard something sizzling in the other room. Wrapped in a towel, I peeked through the door, hoping against hope that I was just being paranoid. This time, I was, but what about next time? I swore off the pills. I was in a good place, and I didn't need them anymore. I'd gained everything I wanted. Sure, it'd take some time to get back to a normal schedule, but I couldn't go back there. No wonder we weren't supposed to take more than 2 or 3 pills in a sequence. If I'd been there a second longer, it would have taken my whole arm. Another hour, and I'd be dead. I decided to give it all back to Samyad. By that time, he had expanded his business a bit, but he'd calmed down as a person. He was a changed man. He was engaged to Wanwan, and he was trying to turn his life around. In fact, we hadn't seen each other for some time. He was a bit surprised when I called about meeting him in his office. I met Samya in his downtown office late one Friday night. It was a strange feeling. There were people everywhere, but I still felt like I was alone. There was this thought crawling around in the back of my head, whispering to me that if I slowed down and really listened, I could hear that sizzling acid as it burned into the asphalt. So I kept my head down and tried to get into the music, the bass, the beat of the party, but it was all just superficial. I couldn't help but think back on that thing. Every time I heard a cough, a sneeze, someone clearing their throat, I thought that was it. It found me. I could feel the squelch of it in my ear, almost like a heat. But I made my way through the club and joined Samya in his office. I put the pills on his desk and sat down across from him. "I'm done with them," I said. "They do something to you?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. I'm just done." "All right, no worries," Samyat nodded. "You okay?" "Not really." Despite not hanging out for a while, Samyat was his usual self. He put the pills away, sat down next to me, and handed me a beer. He'd installed a mini fridge next to his desk. The damn thing made more noise than a ceiling fan. "I'm not going to ask about it," he said. "You look like shit. I feel like shit. What happened to your arm?" "Frostbite." Samyat snorted but saw that I wasn't laughing. He opened his mouth but closed it again. Whatever had happened to me, he knew better than to laugh. Instead, he leaned over, looking worried. "Fuck the pills," he said. "You're sticking with me now, all right?" "All right." He made his best effort to keep me company that night. We had drinks, met some people, and sang some karaoke. I almost got into an arm wrestling competition with a drunk Dutch guy. It was nice, and for a moment, I didn't hear those awful noises. I didn't smell those awful smells. Later that night, I could feel myself growing tired. Usually, I would just pop one of the pills, but I settled for a classic instead. Beetle nuts. Samya and I wrapped them up and bit down. It was nice to feel that familiar crunch and burn. It was a return to form in a way. It was the way things were supposed to be. By the end of the night, we ended up on that same bench, watching the sun. But this time, he was exhausted. He was nodding off over and over as he waited for a friend to pick him up. I was, strangely, not tired in the slightest. "Maybe you still got some of it in your system," Samyat mumbled. "Makes sense, right? I mean, bigger doses, take longer." "Probably," I nodded. "Or maybe it was the nuts." "Nah, they don't work like that. They're a kick, not a trip." By the time Samyat's friend came around to pick him up, he could barely keep his eyes open. He lumbered into the passenger seat and looked back at me one final time. "I'm getting rid of them," he said. "Don't worry, it's done. You'll be fine." But I wasn't feeling fine. Or rather, I was, but that was the problem. I went home and I still couldn't sleep. I went an entire day and I still couldn't sleep. I hadn't taken any pills for some time, but I was still up and about. I was getting worried, but I didn't know where to turn. Had I taken a pill by accident? I reached out to Samyat's contact at the Research Institute, but we couldn't talk about it over email since it was monitored, and this was hardly legal, so we decided to meet downtown later in the week. For the next few days, I was a wreck. I kept thinking about that place and that thing. I'd been up for so many days that I didn't want to think about what would happen when I returned. It would be waiting for me. I could feel it, hear it. I met the man from the Research Institute in early morning. I paid for his coffee, but I didn't get any myself. He was an American in his 50s with a shaved head and a well-trimmed goatee. He hid behind a black baseball cap and wasn't much for small talk. I decided to get right to it. I explained the problem. After taking a larger than usual dose, I couldn't sleep anymore. He didn't look that surprised. "That only happens when you take stimulants," he said. "Didn't he warn you?" "I haven't taken anything," I said. "I don't do drugs." "You sure?" he asked. "Nothing." "Does alcohol count?" I asked. "Beetle nuts, caffeine?" "What? No, that..." He stopped for a second. His eyes turned away as he thought about it. He brought out his phone and checked something, then nodded. "Beetle nuts," he nodded. "That's high in arcoline." "High in what?" "Arcoline. That's the first thing on the list. That's the worst one." "Wait, what?" He adjusted his glasses and read the list out loud. He was right. Arcoline was the first thing on the list, right there next to hard narcotics. "What does it mean?" I asked. "What's going to happen?" He leaned forward, looking over the edge of his silver-rimmed glasses. Arcoline amplifies the effect by a magnitude of about 100. It's one of the reasons they had to shut down the development. At that magnitude, there's no telling what's going to happen. "Wait, 100? So you're going to be awake for maybe a year, maybe 4, and then something I can't even imagine is going to happen to you." There was nothing else to say. He had no advice to give. There were no solutions. The damage was done. I almost burst into tears right then and there. My hands were shaking. I would be awake for years, and then something he couldn't even imagine. If the effect of 2 pills, too many, caught me a burn on the arm, what the hell was going to happen after 100, 200? The bandage itched, and I could hear the sizzling from a nearby kitchen. But it wasn't from the kitchen. It was that thing, and it was waiting for me. It was just a matter of time. I tried everything, but there was nothing to be done. There was nothing wrong with me on paper. I was healthier than ever, in fact. The lab in Vietnam that the man spoke of had been shut down, and all traces of it was dismantled. I had a vague lead to an investor in the US, but it didn't lead me anywhere. I had to sell my share in my company. It stung, but the payout was more than generous. It would keep me afloat for a couple of months, maybe a year, while I tried to work something out. But it was a desperate search for nothing. Even the man from the research institute would drop off the grid. And when strange men in suits started asking my friends and family about me, I knew I'd taken a step too far. This was in February 2023. Every day from that point forward has been a nightmare. In May that same year, I lost the need to eat. It's like my body entered a kind of metastasis. I could sit in a room for days on end, staring at a wall, and nothing would change. I would feel nothing. I would experience nothing, and I wouldn't care. And with no food, I'd need no bathroom breaks. Sometime in July, I lost the need to breathe. I'd forget to do it for days on end, and my lungs would deflate to the point where it hurt to use them. After a couple of weeks, I couldn't talk without bleeding anymore. In late October that year, I stopped blinking. I'd forget to do it for long periods of time, and dust would settle in my eyes. It didn't hurt, but it was uncomfortable to wash them, so I just ended up keeping them closed. Something happened to my skin. I think it stopped needing sunlight. Over a couple of days, I grew so pale you could almost see through me. My fingernails would fall off without using my mouth and jaw. My teeth fell out of my skull. I barely noticed. I had to move in with my sister to care for me. She couldn't understand what was happening, and neither could anyone else. She would force me to go to the doctors, and they couldn't make sense of it. Whenever they mentioned specialists, some anonymous group would throw enough money at them to look the other way. But all that was just cake topping. It was all just physical things. It didn't compare to my thoughts and feelings. I'd feel closer and closer to that dark space. That space beyond, where that thing waited for me. It hungered for me. All the needs and wants I'd lost, it gained. It was hungry, tired, sunburnt, and in constant pain, and it wanted to give it all back to me, to consume me with it. If I just listened hard enough, I could hear it panting, like an eager dog waiting for master to put food in his bowl, ready to tear into me, unashamed. Sometimes I forget what world I'm in. I'll get up and wander around, feeling the walls, imagining them as crumbling ruins. My sister once caught me wandering into the street. If my lungs had worked, she would have heard me begging that thing to leave me. Instead, I got hit by a car, and I didn't feel a thing. Laying crumpled into a pile by the side of the road. The things people say feel like a distant dream. I have no need for serotonin, so joy is something of the past. Sometimes I can hear the music and cheering across the city, but it feels like they're mocking me. But the fear, that's still there. It may be the only emotion that remains. Now it's 2025. I think I attended Samyat's wedding, but I can't know for sure. I think I was there. I didn't see or hear. I can't feel anything when I move my arms anymore. There was a nice smell. I think he offered me some cake. I tried to smile at him, but I don't know if I did it. I've written this with great effort over several weeks. My sister has helped. She washes my eyes, and I would look at the letters for her to type. If I stretch a little, I can get enough air in my lungs to make a noise or a short word. Sometimes at night, when my sister is not here, I think I can hear something outside. Not just in my mind, but on the street. I think they're watching me. I think they're curious about what happens when I go to sleep. Or maybe they're scared. It's funny in a way. They called me Lurk. Closing time. It's fitting. I can't help but think I should have stayed with my father, maintaining farm equipment. I wish I could dream of seeing those pale green walls again. I had to finish this in a hurry. I think the effect is wearing off, like the man said it would. Yesterday, I yawned. Today, I'm tired. Good night, Bangkok. The Worth of a Life by Rain. What would it take for you to kill a man? Excuse me? I asked, taken off guard. A stranger in an expensive-looking suit sat across from me at the bus stop. What would it take for you to kill a man? He repeated. Why are you asking me this? I asked, increasingly unsettled. He leaned back against the bench casually, as if he were simply asking for the time. Because I want to know, David, he said, his face expressionless. How do you know my name? I asked, a chill running through me. This was getting creepy. Who are you? The stranger leaned forward and looked me in the eye. His stare was cold and unwavering. I know everything about you, David, he said, not offering his own name. I know that you are drowning in student loans. They had to sell your car, that you live from one meager paycheck to the next. He leaned back and looked away. I want to know what it would take for you to kill a man, he finished. This guy was seriously freaking me out, and I wanted to run or call the police, but I was afraid of what he might do. He was obviously some kind of psychopath. I decided to humor him carefully until the bus came, just in case. Why would I ever kill someone? I asked. Aside from self-defense, I don't see how that could ever be worth it. You have a gun, and someone is kneeling in front of you, he said. What if pulling that trigger would save 1,000,000 lives? Would you do it? A psychopathic philosopher? So, the trolley problem? I asked cautiously. Switching the tracks to save 1,000,000 people by sacrificing one? The stranger waved a dismissive hand. You could think of it that way, he said. But it doesn't necessarily have to be 1,000,000 people. It could be for anything. Power, money, even the cure for cancer. I never liked the trolley problem. It was always an impossible choice for me. I wouldn't be able to decide, I said, shrugging. Luckily, I'll never have to. He leaned forward again. But what if you do? He said. What if I make the power to make it happen? This guy is insane, I thought. You have the power, I asked, exasperated. If so, why not do it yourself? Why would you make a random person kill someone to cure cancer? I can't do it myself, he replied. I'm unable to directly interfere. I can only act when someone, of their own free will, and by their own hand, provides me with a soul to do so. I leaned back and crossed my arms. Prove it, I said. Prove that you have the power to do this. Like I said, I'm unable to act, he said. However, I can tell you that when you were 10 years old, you found a frog in a secluded field. You named him Jim. You would return weekly to see him until one day he was no longer there. You had a crush on Jenny in high school, he continued. You still think about her. You want to call her, but keep putting it off. You're planning to visit your brother's grave tomorrow, he said. 2 days ago, a conversation with a coworker reminded you of him. You were going to buy flowers later today from the florist on 7th Avenue. Is this satisfactory? The stranger asked. I sat there, frozen in shock. I had never told anyone about any of that. Ever. No one knew but me. It was impossible. Undeniable proof was staring me in the face. There was no other way that he could have known. It took me a moment to find my voice. Okay, I said shakily. So you need me to kill someone? Kill one person to save others? What you kill for is up to you, he said. You can receive anything you wish. The stranger stood up. You have 20 minutes to decide, he said, looking down at me. You will never have this opportunity again. Think carefully. He turned and pointed. In that alley, where I am pointing, he said, you will find a man. I turned to look at the alley. It was right next to the bus stop. He continued, you will also find a gun. State your desire loudly and clearly before pulling the trigger. He lowered his hand and turned to leave. Decide what you kill for. Decide the worth of a life. The stranger started walking away. Remember, 20 minutes, he said, his voice fading. Will you pull the trigger? I looked at my watch, then slumped back on the bench, overwhelmed. What should I do, I thought. Was there actually a man in that alley? A man who would live or die depending on my decision? Was it worth of a life? Was it more lives? I could save the unsavable, cure the uncurable, find the cure for cancer, fix climate change, discover the secret to immortality, a world without suffering. Just one life lost to save countless others. But what about money? I could be rich, never work another day in my life, debt erased, no longer struggling, barely making enough to survive, a life of unparalleled luxury for one pull of the trigger. Power, I could rule nations, change the course of history, every law, every war, every scientific pursuit guided by my hand. No one could stop me. Unmatched potential achieved by removing another's. My thoughts were racing. What about the person I would kill? Did they have family? Friends? Were they like me? With their own hopes and dreams? Their entire life gone with one bullet. It would be my fault. It would be my decision that they should die. Their innocent blood would be on my hands. Forever. 15 minutes had passed. Do the ends justify the means? Should I kill them? Or do the means justify the ends? Should I let them live? I kept looking at the alley. I had never been so stressed in my entire life. I could barely think. I had to decide. I had to decide now. I jumped up and started walking toward the alley. There was no choice. I had to do this. The world would be a better place in exchange for one single life. My steps carried me closer. It had to be done. I would make sure they were remembered forever as a hero. Someone who saved the world. Just do it. Keep walking. My heart was aching, tearing itself apart. Get there. Pull the trigger. My legs were so heavy. End a life. I struggled to keep moving. I was almost there. I have to. 10 feet from the alley, my legs gave out. I fell to my knees. Tears rolled down my face. I couldn't breathe. I looked down at my hands. They were blurry, shaking uncontrollably. It was too much. I can't do it, I whispered, sobbing. I can't do it. I couldn't kill someone innocent, for a world they would never see. My decision was made. I would not pull the trigger. Trying to control my trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and called the police. It was clear to me now. It couldn't be measured. The worth of a life. Soon after, the police arrived. They couldn't find the stranger I'd been talking to. They did, however, find someone in the alley. Someone holding a gun, waiting for me. There's something in the forest pretending to be a person by decisive unluckiness. The bus ride out was long and quiet. I spent most of it either staring out the window or drifting in and out of sleep. I was the last one aboard after a few passengers trickled off in small rural towns. The bus suddenly came to a halt, and a distraught man got aboard. He stumbled down the aisle, sat across from me, and began to scribble intently into a battered, leather-bound book. He looked older, maybe in his 60s, tired-looking, wearing well-worn and dirty hiking gear. He spent the whole ride either writing or flipping through the pages. About an hour before my stop, the bus driver called out, "Rainham National Park Ranger Station." The man abruptly stood up and rushed to the front of the bus. He searched his pockets frantically, then slapped some loose change onto the fare counter before darting off without saying a word. Sometime later, the bus driver called out my stop. As I was about to exit, I noticed that the man from earlier had, in his hurry, left his book on the seat behind the driver. I figured I'd keep it safe. If I saw him again on the trail, I could return it, or I could hand it over to the rangers on my way back home. The trail was empty except for the occasional deer or rabbit darting between the trees. I spent hours listening to the crunch under my boots, bird calls, and the rustle of leaves and pine needles. As the sun crept closer to the horizon, I figured it was time to set up my camp for the night. I found a suitable spot next to a small stream and began unpacking my backpack. I set up my tent, gathered some firewood, and boiled water from the stream to rehydrate a freeze-dried meal. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the temperature began to sink. I tucked myself into my sleeping bag, but I couldn't shake the urge I had been trying to ignore all evening. I glanced over at the book sitting half buried in the open lid of my pack. I reached for it and flipped to the first few pages. The handwriting was compact but neat. It started off like any trail journal, short entries about trail conditions, notes on the weather, and a few sketches of flowers. One entry even described a fox encounter in surprisingly poetic detail. I had just turned to another page when I heard a voice call out, "Hello? Anyone there?" I slowly unzipped the tent and poked my head out. In the dim glow of the dying embers, I could just make out the outline of a man standing a few meters away. "Sorry to bother you. I noticed your fire," the man said. "Would you mind if I pitch my tent here? It's getting late and I'd rather not stumble around looking for another spot in the dark." Out here, hospitality felt less like a choice and more like an unspoken rule. "Sure, plenty of space," I answered hesitantly. He crouched and began to stir the fire with a practiced hand. With a few quick motions, he coaxed the embers back into a flame. The fire blared brighter than it had all evening, crackling and alive again, pushing back the shadows and fully illuminating his face. He looked to be in his 50s, nearly bald with small patches of hair clinging to his scalp, dark rings around his eyes, and an unshaven jaw. His clothes were covered in dried mud. He smiled faintly. "Hope you don't mind," he said, glancing up at me. He lowered himself onto a rock across from me and warmed his hands over the fire. "My name's Eric," he said. After a moment, "You been out here long?" I'm John. First day out here. You?" "Long enough," he replied with a chuckle. "Well, I don't want to keep you up all night." I crawled back into my sleeping bag as he pitched his tent next to mine. The last thing I saw before I drifted off to sleep was his silhouette, sitting perfectly still by the fire. "Morning," I mumbled, stepping out of my tent. A small kettle of water hissed quietly on a makeshift grate over the flames. "I didn't hear you get up." He glanced at me with a practiced smile. "Got up early and figured I'd boil some water for your coffee." I froze. "How do you know I drink coffee in the morning?" "I recognized the acidic scent on your breath yesterday. Figured you'd want the water ready." His tone remaining nonchalant. Some habits are hard to miss. I rummaged through my pack and pulled out the small tin of instant coffee. "Well, I've got some bread too if you want some." Eric shook his head. "Thanks, but I've already eaten." He poured the hot water into 2 cups and I stirred some powdered coffee into mine. I reached to pour some into Eric's cup, but he quickly lifted his cup of plain, hot water to his mouth and drank it in one swift motion. Perhaps he prefers tea, though, I thought. Breakfast done, we put out the fire and efficiently packed up the tents and gear. The morning light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. I unfurled my map and compass and started to plot a course to the next campsite, when I felt Eric put his hand on my shoulder. "I know the way," he said simply. There was no arrogance in his tone, only a certainty that left no room for discussion. The air was crisp and birds called sporadically from the treetops. Eric moved with an ease that made it clear he was more than comfortable here. navigating rocks and inclines without hesitation. We hiked for hours in silence. Curiously, Eric fell back to walk behind me, occasionally offering directions or commenting on my footing. At first, I thought he might just have been giving me some space, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he either wanted to watch me or didn't want me to watch him. The forest seemed to respond to our passage. The rustle of leaves was quieter, and the birds that had greeted the morning had gone silent. Eventually, the urge to pee forced me to set my backpack down, and I walked behind a nearby tree. When I returned, I noticed the main component zipper on my backpack was pulled down just a crack. "Need anything from my pack?" I asked Eric. I looked at your compass to make sure we're heading the right way. Not wanting to antagonize my new hiking companion out in the middle of nowhere, I gave him a nod, and we pressed on. The path gradually widened into a clearing, and the new campsite lay ahead. I unpacked my tent while Eric built the fire with practice motions. "Here, let me help you with that," Eric said quietly and came over to me. He grabbed the tent stakes and drove them into the dirt with his bare, flat palm. Seeing my surprise, he patted my back, his hand feeling cold, even through the fabric of my shirt. He returned to the fire, sitting perfectly still and watching me with unnervingly attentive eyes. As we waited for the water to boil for supper, I retrieved the leather-bound book from my backpack. As I flipped it open, I noticed Eric's eyes slightly widen, a flicker of recognition that vanished as quickly as it appeared. He shifted back into his usual posture, hands resting on his knees, and fixed his gaze on the flames. Settling back against a log, I flipped to where I left off that evening before and continued to read. October 4th, 2025. We made good time to the first campsite, arriving well before sunset. A great start to our 5-day loop. Clear sky, light wind from the west. A gunshot woke me up after midnight. Eric's bag was empty. I called for him and received no response. He came out of the dark a few minutes later, said he'd had to scare off a bear lurking around the camp. We'll take a look around the area first thing in the morning. October 5th, 2025. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary around the camp. Found prints, not from a bear though. Eric's been mostly quiet. Says he slept badly. Air heavy with thunderclouds on the horizon, but the storm never came in. Trail mostly dry. October 6th, 2025. I haven't seen Eric eat or drink since yesterday morning. He waved off breakfast. At the stream, he didn't refill his bottle. At lunch, he said he wasn't hungry. Maybe he's queasy. I tried to bring up some old stories. He seemed oddly curious, like it was the first time he had heard them. Didn't add details or correct me the way he always does. Just watched the firewood collapse to coals. Otherwise, it was very humid, and a full moon helped to light up the forest at night. October 7th, 2025. I woke up twice last night. Eric was still up. I don't think he noticed me. I decided to confront him this morning about his strange behavior. He just sat there, expressionless. I've noticed that his reactions always come a second too late, like he's trying to figure out how he should respond correctly. His skin looks different too. New wrinkles, a slight yellow tone, and his hair has started to fall out. My only explanation is that something might have poisoned him. October 8th, 2025. It doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't blink. There is no soul behind its eyes. It just sits by the fire and watches. I cut a hole in the back of my tent. Tonight, I'm leaving. I looked up from the journal and met Eric's eyes across the fire. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, without breaking eye contact, he said calmly, "The water is ready." My hand shook as I fumbled with a pack of dried chicken and poured in the hot water. The plastic crinkled loudly in the silence. Eric shifted slightly, the firelight flickering across his face. He opened a small pack of chicken, picked out the pieces of meat with his bare, dirty fingers, rinsed off the sauce in the boiling water, and swallowed the pieces whole. After some time, he spoke. "These woods are old. They have stories if you know how to listen." What kind of stories? I asked, careful to not let my unease show. Well, there's one about a creature that's been here longer than any map or trail. Most people think it's just a local legend, but I've seen signs that suggest otherwise. He leaned forward, and for a moment his face held what might have been a look of sorrow. They say a long time ago, there was a man who lived not far from here, a hunter, clever and strong, but with a hunger in him that no food could satisfy. He began to hunt not for deer, not rabbit, but people. Travelers, wanderers, anyone foolish enough to stray too far into the woods. He ate their flesh, wore their skin, and thought himself above the laws of men. For his crimes, God, or maybe something older, cursed him to walk the forest forever, never resting, never belonging. To torment him further, they say he was given a gift. He could take the shape of any man or woman and wear any face he desired. I could study them, live beside them, almost fool himself into believing he was human again. Almost. Eric stirred the fire with a stick. No matter how much he learned how to laugh, how to cry, or how to tell stories, something always betrayed him. His reflection came back wrong. His eyes were void of a soul. And when people noticed, when they looked too closely, well, he had to feed. He paused, letting the silence fill the clearing. They say he still walks these woods, listening, learning, hoping that someone will mistake him for a human. Yes, spooky story, I muttered, no longer able to meet his eyes. My mind raced. Should I make a move, bolt into the forest and risk being caught in the dark, or stay and act like nothing had changed? Every instinct screamed to run, yet my body was frozen in place like a statue. I studied the features of my companion, and with every glance, my stomach twisted tighter. His skin was pale and patchy, loose in some places, and stretched too tightly over bone in others. Yellowed with hints of purple bruising around his neck. It looked as though it had begun the early stages of decomposition. Even his breathing seemed off, shallow and deliberate, as though he were carefully measuring the amount of air in each inhale. And yet, I had been blind to the truth, staring me in the face. I curled my hands in a fist to keep the shaking from showing, forced myself to breathe evenly and to keep my expression neutral. My mind raced to find the right words, a way to break the tension. I rubbed at my eyes, feigning a tired yawn, and muttered something about turning in early, hoping that my voice didn't reveal the dread that had solidified inside me. Just as my mind had started to pick apart the inconsistencies of his disguise, I couldn't help but wonder if he could do the same to me. I slipped into my tent and pulled the zipper closed with slow, careful hands. My fingers shook as I unfolded the map, the paper crackling far too loudly. I traced the lines with a finger, estimating the nearest road at just over 40 kilometers away. The problem was, I couldn't even be sure of our location. Having followed Eric's lead the entire day, it was also a day's trek in daylight, let alone in the middle of the night, but it was the only chance I had. Essentially only flashlight, compass, map, knife, water bottle, protein bars, matches, and the journal. I stuffed them all into a small drawstring sack that usually held my sleeping bag. Impelled by the journal entries, I carefully drew the knife from its sheath. I gripped the knife with both hands to steady it and pressed the steel into the tense nylon until it parted with a faint hiss. I eased myself through the slit, every rustle of the fabric thunderous to my ears, and slipped into the darkness just beyond the firelight. The forest stretched on without end. The only sounds were my rasped breath and the thud of my heartbeat. Beneath it, faint at first, there was something else, a low murmur at the edge of hearing, like someone whispering in the distance. As I ran closer, the sound grew into the unmistakable rush of water. The river was wider than I'd hoped. The moonlight glinted across the surface, silver streaks breaking into shards where the current churned. I hesitated at the riverbank, weighing whether to wade through the freezing water or search for a way around, when a sudden crash echoed from the direction I had come, twigs snapping, branches splintering. Something was moving fast and coming straight towards me. I ripped the sack from my shoulders and hurled it across the water. It landed with a thud on the gravel on the far shore. I stepped into the water. The cold was immediate and brutal, stabbing like needles up my legs. The current nearly swept me off my feet. It wrenched a boot loose from my left foot and dragged it downstream. I waded toward a massive tangle of driftwood caught against some rocks. My body pressed against the slick wood as I slowly submerged myself until only my eyes broke the surface. I forced myself to stay still, every muscle locked. It crawled from the trees on all fours, its limbs bending in impossible directions, moving with an unnatural elasticity. Its spine arched grotesquely, inverted like a demonic contortionist. Eric's head was twisted around on its own neck with eyes staring forward. It waded into the water, coming straight toward my hiding spot, each step deliberate, like a predator closing in on its prey. It stopped and jerked upright, like a dog catching a scent. It sniffed the air and slowly tilted its head downstream. In a sudden blur of motion, it bolted in that direction, thrashing through the water with a speed that defied anything human. I dragged myself from the freezing water and stumbled onto the shore. I collapsed for a moment on the gravel, heaving for air. I slowly managed to stand up, hoisted the sack over my shoulder, and staggered into the trees. My left foot, now only protected by a wet wool sock, hurt with every misstep. Jolts of pain shot up my leg as I stepped on a sharp rock or a pointy twig. I leaned against a tree and slid down until my back rested firmly against the bark. I needed warmth and dry clothing, but a campfire would likely act as a beacon to my location. Hands shivering, I fumbled for my bag and pulled out the leather-bound book. I held it flat to illuminate the pages with the help of the moonlight as I flipped to the next entry. October 9th, 2025. Humans evolved to be expert pattern recognizers. Our brains expend valuable energy analyzing faces in real time, mouth curvature, the cadence of a blink, the subtle shift of a pupil. Most people don't notice. It's unconscious. But when a detail doesn't fit the expected pattern, something ancient and deep inside us rebels. It's an instinct honed over thousands of years, designed to protect us from the unnatural. If someone is reading this, don't make the same mistake I did. It has spent centuries perfecting its disguise, because it craves the only thing it can never truly be: a human. Don't break the illusion. Not for a second. Not even in your thoughts. I pushed myself off the tree, every joint stiff, and started walking. I forced my steps to be silent and careful. I waded back across the river. My destination was just a short distance away. On the riverbank, I found a trail of broken branches and followed them until I saw a faint glow flickering between the trees ahead. The campsite looked unchanged. The familiar silhouettes of the tents stood exactly where we had pitched them, but there was no sign of Eric. I stripped off my soaked clothes, hung them over a branch, and dug out a dry set from my bag. I sat down next to the campfire and stretched out my hands to feel the warmth. A shift in the air prickled the back of my neck, and I heard the clicking sounds of joints snapping back into place, one by one. I have something I've wanted to tell you. I found this book on the bus. My thumb traced the worn spine as I spoke. I think you know who it belongs to. Perhaps you could return it to its owner for me? Eric stepped out of the darkness. His neck was bruised, and the stretched remnants of his face, pulled too many ways, sagged down. Partially covering his eyes and mouth, he looked at me from across the flames, then sat down on the other side. He took the book from me and placed it on the ground next to him dismissively. He then stretched out his other hand, holding something. Found your shoe. I stared down at the dirty sock protecting my foot for a moment, then forced myself to look up to meet his eyes. Thanks, I managed. Must have slipped off your foot, Eric said casually. I was unlucky. Unlucky? Eric repeated, tasting the word in his mouth. No, you are lucky. Lucky I found it. How would we finish our hike if you couldn't walk properly? Every movement now felt like a performance under scrutiny. Every blink and every word I spoke had to seem natural, too fast, too slow, too rehearsed, and the fragile illusion I had mended for him would shatter. You should get some sleep. The last leg will be the most difficult, Eric stated matter-of-factly. Grateful for the sudden exit, I gave him a small nod and slipped into my tent. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake for hours, listening intently and waiting for something to happen. Morning soon arrived, and I emerged from the tent to find Eric exactly where I had left him, though something was different. The item that had kept me alive was gone. As we packed up the tent for the last time, I spotted the now blackened and gray remnants of leather and paper in the fire pit. The trail was uneven and littered with slippery rocks, wet from overnight dew. Concentrating on each careful step gave me a brief mental reprieve from the predator I could feel stalking just a few paces behind me. As I stepped out of the tree line and onto the road, the footsteps behind me abruptly disappeared. I turned and looked back into the dark woods I had spent the weekend trapped in. The only traces of him were quadrupedal prints pressed into the dirt beside my own boot prints. My mind replayed every moment of the last few days like a nightmare I couldn't shake as I waited for my ride home. The bus rumbled as it pulled away from the stop. I leaned back in my seat, the window cool against my temple, and let out a slow breath. After a while, I slipped a hand into my jacket pocket and felt something dry and brittle. Charred scraps of paper rested in my hand. The edges were blackened and fragile, but the writing was still legible. I took out my phone and opened a blank note. I'm doing my best to recount everything that has happened while the memories are still vivid and fresh in my mind.